Well, it's a brand new week, and it's a brand new opportunity to support Free Speech TV. And what an extraordinary thing, right? To have a television network that consistently tells the truth, that has some just brilliant programming from everything from news to opinion to interactive programming to diverse voices on multiple dimensions. This is something that the Free Speech TV is a network that is really truly unique in the United States and worthy of your support. And I'm honored to be on the network. I'm happy to be on the network. I hope that this program is of value to you. I know that the network is of value to me beyond my own program. I mean, just the existence of a progressive television network in the United States seems just so very, very important. So I have two asks for you today. The first is real simple. Would you please make an effort today or this week, just kind of a commitment to yourself, to not just tell a few other people about Free Speech TV, but get at least one other person. Duplicate yourself. Get at least one other person to watch a couple of programs on Free Speech TV and with the goal of bringing in one more regular viewer, one more person who is, who regularly likes Free Speech TV. Think about, think about a friend of yours, somebody that you know, who you think might have an interest in. Would they probably bond best with me or with Stephanie or with Randy or with Sonali or with Amy Goodman or David Packman? What program would really ring their bell? What program would they, and there's other programs as well. I'm sorry, I don't have everything on the top of my head, but what do you think is going to really get them hooked on Free Speech TV? And then figure out a way to, maybe invite them over to watch with you, or to watch together virtually, and you can talk on the phone while you're both watching TV, or you can say, hey, watch the first half hour of the show and then let's talk, or something like that. Figure out a way. There's got to be ways to do this, right? Creativity here. This is your opportunity to bring in new people, because we need to expand our base for Free Speech TV and have more people participating, more people viewing. Of course, we want to get the message out wider. I mean, a good, solid, informational, progressive message, but that also strengthens our fundraising base for Free Speech TV. The more viewers we have, there's always a small percentage of viewers who are donors, and so the more donors we'll have as well. So that's a way that you can actually help Free Speech TV, even financially, without sending them money. The second ask, of course, is to send Free Speech TV some money. That's pretty straightforward. And there's two ways to do that. One is by making a one-time contribution. Call 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org during the program that you're watching and make a contribution online. Very straightforward stuff. The second way to do it is to have a regular recurring contribution where your gift is your credit card is dinged every month, and that need not be a huge amount of money. It's the predictability is actually the factor or the variable there that is so very important. Is that Free Speech TV, I've talked about this a lot. I don't need to explain this in great detail right now, because you've probably already heard it 30 times, but having that ability to do budgeting, to know going into the future that, we've got this number of people giving this amount of money, that's important stuff. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. There's a number of premiums that Free Speech TV offers with your gifts. When you make these are all for one-time gifts. There's, with a $20 gift, there is your choice between the Free Speech TV sticky sticker, like a bumper sticker kind of sticker, or the Free Speech TV clear sticker, like the clingy kind of stick-it-on-glass sticker. With a $50 gift, there is the Free Speech TV canvas tote bag, which is, suitable for groceries or books or shopping or, picnicking, all kinds of things. It's a very, very nice canvas tote bag in two different designs, by the way. You can pick one. With a $75 gift, you have a choice between a Free Speech TV hat or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug with my mug on it, with a $75 gift. Only available here. Sure to be a collector's item someday. With a $100 gift, you have a choice of the Free Speech TV notebook and pen or the Free Speech TV socks. With a $120 gift, the Free Speech TV t-shirt or the Hidden History of American Healthcare, my newest book, How Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich. $240 gift, the virtual meet and greet. $360 gift, Thom Hartmann University gift box, the socks, the bumper sticker, the Hidden History of Healthcare, the mug and the hat, and a $1,000 gift. Get in line to come visit us here in Portland, and we'll hang out together, and I'll buy you a lunch. Those are the goodies, but mostly it's here's your chance to be a part of something extraordinary. This little engine that could, this wonderful television network, Free Speech TV. Please call now.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, a new week begins. Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. And fall is in the air here in Portland. I don't know about where you're living. We've got a packed show today. In this first hour, I've got a rant about maybe America should try democracy. I'll get to that in a minute. Also, why do anti-vaxxers get away with killing more than just themselves? The Ray Martin DeMonia story. We'll get to that. And Veronica Walski and QAnon followers going after the hospital. This is another amazing story. In our second hour, Meagan Hatcher-Mays is going to drop by about ways that we can fix the U.S. Supreme Court. That'll be a brief visit from a guest, and then my rants following that about how the GOP thinks they can take down Biden by killing more Americans by polluting the internet. What can and should be done about that? And also in the second part of the second hour, we're learning about Saudis financing 9/11. I think this is much bigger than that, and there's this widespread mythology in America about, Stone Age idiots coming after our country that I just want to blow up. We'll get to that in the second hour of the program. And in our third hour, for the full hour, we're going to do a deep dive, conversations with great minds. Professor Sophie Bjork-James has a new book out. It's about the white evangelical movement. And where did it come from? Where is it going? This is a relatively recent phenomenon in Christianity. It really traces itself just back to the 1940s. And it has become a powerhouse in America and is in many ways shaping our political lives and everything else. So we'll get to that. But I want to start out with my rant today from HartmannReport.com titled "The Filibuster: Should America Try Democracy?" And here's my take. First of all, the news. I mean, there's a news hook to this, and I think it's a really important one. Rolling Stone magazine reported over the weekend a leak out of Chuck Schumer's office that he had a telephone conversation with Joe Biden, in which President Biden said, "I am ready to start leaning on some of these moderate Republicans to blow up the filibuster, or at least to alter it so that we can pass voting rights legislation. Just let me know when you want me to start making phone calls." It's a paraphrase, but that's pretty much exactly what Joe Biden said to Chuck Schumer. That's a very, very good thing, in my opinion, because, because ending the filibuster would be what puts the final nail in the Republicans' coffin. Now, I realize that that's the exact opposite of what the Democrats who are defending the filibuster say they're doing. Right? The story that we're getting from Democrats who are defending the filibuster is, you don't want to get rid of the filibuster because Republicans will eventually take control of the Senate, and then they'll pass god-awful legislation. And we won't be able to stop them by filibustering it. Which is true. But I think that's a plus, not a minus, because I believe in democracy. Now, I get it that, the Democrats in the Senate, even though it's 50-50, the Democrats represent 41 million more people than Republicans do. So, it's kind of modified democracy. But nonetheless, the way the Constitution establishes the Senate is that a majority of votes wins the day, passes laws. And I think the cynical skepticism about democracy is just completely inconsistent with the ideals of democracy that we not only have proclaimed domestically, but we've tried to spread around the world. We went into Afghanistan and said, okay, let's set up a parliament here. And we didn't introduce a filibuster. I think the more important point is that the Republican Party has gotten away with what they've gotten away with for the last 40 years, in large part because they have two agendas. They have an agenda of what they do, which they don't talk about very much. And then they have the agenda of what they say, which they almost never actually do. And they use the filibuster as an excuse for not doing it. What they do is put right-wing crank judges on the Supreme Court and other federal courts and pass massive tax cuts for billionaires and the corporations that fund their campaigns. That's what they do. But they don't talk about that much, and frankly, it doesn't get that much coverage in the press. What they talk about is altogether different. What the Republican Party, for years and years has been telling their base is that, that they want to outlaw all abortions, that they want to privatize Social Security and Medicare, that they want to criminalize gay marriage and gender nonconformity. They want to require Christian prayer in schools. They want to do away with the minimum wage. They want to expand fossil fuel use. They want to outlaw gun laws, and they want to end all food and medical support to children and low-income people. And their base kind of eats that up and says, yeah, cool. And in fact, they've been doing a lot of those things in the states where they don't have the filibuster. Democrats, and I'll get back to that in just a second. Democrats, on the other hand, say they want to leave abortion decisions to women. They want to protect LGBTQ plus people. They want to strengthen Social Security and Medicare. They want to separate religion from government. They want to raise the minimum wage. They want to get us off our fossil fuel addiction. They want to put into place common sense gun laws, and they want to end poverty in the richest country in the world. That's a pretty clear contrast between what the Republicans are telling their base they want to do and what the Democrats are telling their base they want to do. But neither one of those agendas at the federal level are getting put into law because of the filibuster. The Republicans block the Democratic agenda. The Democrats block the Republican agenda, depending on who's in power. And as a result, that clear contrast for the vast majority of Americans. Now, Democrats are talking to their base, and so 20% of Americans know what the Democrats really believe in. Republicans are talking to their base, so maybe 20% of Americans know what Republicans really believe in. But 60% of Americans, the people who are not the base of either party, have no clue what's going on. They think both parties are the same. We're stuck with mush because of the filibuster in the Senate. So if you get rid of the filibuster, when the Democrats govern, you'll get to see what the Democrats actually are going to do. And when the Republicans govern, you'll get to see what the Republicans are going to actually do. And again, people say, oh my God, you don't want the Republicans to actually be able to do that. Yes, I do. And here's why. Look at Texas. Republicans in Texas for 50 years have been happy to just give lip service to ending abortion because they knew that it would keep their, this small slice, the frenetic, frantic, committed anti-abortion folks in their base, it would keep them with the Republican Party. But they didn't want to actually do it. Well, they finally did it. Right? They finally got some true believers in Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick and their legislature, and they did it. And look at the headlines now. This is from Real Clear Politics. The Texas abortion gambit is politically insane. From USA Today, Texas abortion law may hurt Republicans in 2022 midterms. Forbes, twice as many Democrats say abortion a top voting issue now in wake of Texas ban, poll finds. The Atlantic, Texas Republicans got what they wanted. They might regret it. The Orlando Sentinel, Texas abortion law gives Florida Democrats midterm edge. The Hill, Virginia Democrats look to tie GOP to Texas abortion law. So it's hurting the Republican Party because they actually were able to do what they've been saying for 50 years. On the other hand, look at in the states where Democrats have actually put into place the things that they're talking about nationally. Here in Oregon, for 20 years, we've had all mail-in elections. 20 years, over 20 years. And there's 5 states that do this. With the exception of Utah, all democratically controlled states, not a whiff of scandal. And the highest voter participation rates in the country. Colorado and Washington State were the first to legalize marijuana back in 2012. And now this less toxic than alcohol intoxicant is going national. Multiple blue states have minimum wages over $12. I believe in Washington State it's over $13. And what has been the result? An increase in economic vitality and prosperity. California's led the nation in clean air and green energy policies, overwhelmingly supported by their citizens. And those policies are starting to be adopted across the country. Multiple blue states have gun control laws, red states don't. And so Rhode Island, with the nation's second most restrictive laws, has a gun death rate of 3 per 100,000 people, while Mississippi, with almost no gun control laws, has a gun death rate of 22 per 100,000 people. Blue states, which have all expanded Medicare, while 12 red states have refused to do so, are markedly healthier and their citizens live longer. I mean, it works. Get rid of the filibuster. Let the Republicans try their best. You don't think that the people will be revulsed and turn the tables on them afterwards? That's why we have elections. Listen, either you believe in democracy or you don't. I would say to those so-called moderate Democrats in the Senate, and I'm not just talking about Manchin and Sinema, there's like 6 of them who are saying, well, if we get rid of the filibuster, the Republicans will do terrible things next time they get power. Let them. Either you believe in democracy or you don't. We've been preaching democracy all around the world for over 200 years, but we don't practice it here at home. End the filibuster and let the chips fall where they may, let the voters fall where they may. Isn't this America? Isn't that the American way? If you want links and whatnot to everything that I just pointed out to you, it's all over at HartmannReport.com. We'll be right back. I want to get into this guy in Alabama. This is just a tragedy. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's the place where despair is not an option, and we believe in democracy. Back with more in just a moment. And welcome back. Jessica in Chicago, watch this on Free Speech TV. Hey, Jessica, what's up?
Hi, Tom. That was a brilliant rant.
Thank you.
And you made me feel good at the end. Yes. And these crazy school board meetings need to be on Zoom until these Trumpster parents learn how to control themselves.
I agree.
This weekend, my husband and I were talking. My husband was saying the school board could set up, they have the meetings, but set up laptops and have the crazy parents in there, but the school board's on each is on their laptop answering questions with the members. And I said, for a joke, I said maybe they should put the filters on too. That would be great.
Yeah, put rabbit ears on them. But Jessica, let me make what you just said into an actual serious policy suggestion. All across America, there are people who, not a lot, but there are people who have a tripod and a camera in their home, who like I said, not a lot, maybe 1 or 2% of Americans, but if and know how to plug it into their computer and stream stuff to the internet. If folks like that, with that little tiny slice of technical expertise, were to contact their local school board and say, if you're worried about being intimidated, please let me come in and let's just live stream the whole thing. I'll take care of the technical end of it. You just let me be there and do it with you. And, let the chips fall where they may. Brilliant things might be said, stupid things might be said, but let me stream the school board meetings. I think that'd be a huge public service. And I would like to encourage anybody who's watching who has that technical ability or who has, a kid or a friend who has that technical ability to volunteer their services to the local school board meeting, or if the school board will allow it, without necessarily getting the official approval of the school board, but not having their disapproval. Just show up and do it.
I was happy to hear that they actually arrested the Trumpsters who were violent at the last meeting, and they need to hold them accountable.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, these guys go on Twitter under pseudonyms where only Jack Dorsey knows who they really are, or on Facebook under pseudonyms where you don't know who they really are very often, or sometimes, and act like sociopaths. But when you're on camera in a school board meeting, it's fairly easy to figure out who you actually are. And you would think that would moderate their behavior. And I think what you're suggesting, Jessica, that we start Zoom, live Zoom or Skype or whatever, live streaming school board meetings and other public events, by the way. I'd say city council meetings as well, and any place else where these guys are showing up.
Yes,
is absolutely brilliant. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I may borrow that idea and turn it into an op-ed with your permission.
Yes, do.
Okay.
I love you.
Thank you. Okay, Jessica, I think you're onto something. And let me just say once again, if anybody, if you who are watching, right, or listening, if you have the technical expertise to offer to the local school board to Zoom their meetings, contact them and see if you can get their permission to do it. Let's get this stuff out there because they need protection. And this, by the way, would also apply, I think, to any meetings of election officials. I don't know if they have public meetings or not, though. I suspect that they don't. But Jessica, brilliant. Thank you for the call. Great talking with you. We'll be right back. It's 21 minutes past the hour. Stick around. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. We have a new video up over at ThomHartmann.com about conspiracy theories. Abby Richards came up with a kind of a hierarchy of conspiracies, maybe a variation on the old Maslow hierarchy. And it goes from actual conspiracies to maybe this was a conspiracy, maybe not, we have questions, to this is kind of crazy stuff, but who knows, flying saucers, for example, to actual science denial, conspiracy theories that actually serve to promote the interests of a particular industry or wealthy individuals, to the totally crazy stuff, the flat earth, the reptilian overlords and all that kind of thing, conspiracy theories that can do tremendous damage. And, one of those being one of the conspiracy theories that, brought two Republicans into Congress this year. So anyhow, I lay the whole thing out with a new video for our supporters over at ThomHartmann.com. And welcome back. Okay, so topic 2 here that I want to put on the table for us all. This is just a tragic story, and I think it doesn't get anywhere near enough attention. You will recall that 3 weeks ago, Donald Trump did a rally, almost 4 weeks ago now, Donald Trump did a rally in Cullman, Alabama, and 45,000 Trump cultists showed up. Now, what might be the consequence of that? Well, this guy, his name is Ray Martin DeMonia, or DeMonia, I'm not, D-E-M-O-N-I-A, let's assume it's DeMonia, from Meridian, Mississippi, which is nearby. He's a Cullman native. He was 3 days shy of his 74th birthday. Presumably is vaccinated from everything I'm reading from his obituary. They don't come out and say it, but his obituary is a plea to people to get vaccinated. He had a heart attack. He didn't have COVID. He had a heart attack. And he needed to go to the hospital for his heart attack. And so he called up the Cullman Regional Medical Center. This is, the hospital in the town where Donald Trump had 45,000 cultists 3 weeks ago. They were slammed. They had no room in the hospital. So they started calling other hospitals. They called 3,400 hospitals in a 200-mile radius, and finally they found one that was more than 200 miles away in another state in Mississippi, the Rush Foundation Hospital. And by the time they got him there, he was dead from a heart attack. Because every single hospital within a 200-mile radius of where Donald Trump held his rally was filled to the gills, so filled to the gills with COVID patients that they couldn't treat a guy with a heart attack. In his obituary, his family said, "In honor of Ray, please get vaccinated if you have not, in an effort to free up resources for non-COVID related emergencies. We would not want any other family to go through what we did." Meanwhile, we've got the, and this is just, totally bizarre, is Veronica Walsky. This is a woman who, she was in a hospital in, it's the Amida Health Resurrection Medical Center in Chicago, in the Chicago area. And Veronica Walsky was a QAnon fan, a Trump fan, who was famous for hanging a banner over a bridge in Chicago. And Lynn Wood, the lawyer who filed all the Trump lawsuits about voter fraud, he urged his 814,000 Telegram followers to call the hospital and demand that she be given ivermectin. They did. They overwhelmed the hospital. The hospital said, "Sorry, ivermectin is not an approved drug for COVID. We're not going to give it to her." She died. And now Lynn Wood is having, he says, "It's our responsibility to ensure that these medical murders stop now and the perpetrators be brought to justice. Veronica will be on her bridge in heaven looking down at us. We must do our best to make sure Veronica did not leave this earth in vain." And so people are, he says he's going to sue the Amida Resurrection Hospital for complicity in murder. And he put out the hospital's phone number, and along with a note that said, "Let this hospital hear your voices now." They are being slammed with calls to the point, I mean, this is insane. How do you do business if you're being slammed with crackpot calls accusing you of murder? The CDC, by the way, also says now that the number of people in the U.S. calling poison control centers from suffering the bad side effects from ivermectin, 5 times higher than it was, just a month or 3 ago.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
This is nuts. I've got a little more to share with you about this that I will get to, about Denmark and about what's going on with the right wing in America at the top of the next hour. Stick around. Well, it's a brand new week, and it's a brand new opportunity to support Free Speech TV. And what an extraordinary thing, right? To have a television network that consistently tells the truth, that has some just brilliant programming from everything from news to opinion to interactive programming to diverse voices on multiple dimensions. This is something that is, Free Speech TV is a network that is really and truly unique in the United States and worthy of your support. And I'm honored to be on the network. I'm happy to be on the network. I hope that this program is of value to you. I know that the network is of value to me beyond my own program. I mean, just the existence of a progressive television network in the United States seems just so very, very important. So I have 2 asks for you today. The first is real simple. Would you please make an effort today or this week, just kind of a commitment to yourself, to not just tell a few other people about Free Speech TV, but get at least one other person. Duplicate yourself. Get at least one other person to watch a couple of programs on Free Speech TV and with the goal of bringing in one more regular viewer, one more person who is, who regularly likes Free Speech TV. think about, think about a friend of yours, somebody that you know, who you think might have an interest in. Would they probably bond best with me or with Stephanie or with Randy or with Sonali or with Amy Goodman or David Packman? What program would really ring their bell? What program would they, and there's other programs as well. I'm sorry, I don't have everything on the top of my head, but what do you think is going to really get them hooked on free speech TV? And then figure out a way to, maybe invite them over to watch with you. Or to watch together virtually, and you can talk on the phone while you're both watching TV, or you can say, hey, watch the first half hour of the show and then let's talk, or something like that. Figure out a way. There's got to be ways to do this, right? Creativity here. This is your opportunity to bring in new people, because we need to expand our base for free speech TV and have more people participating, more people viewing. Of course, we want to get the message out wider. I mean, a good, solid, informational, progressive message, but that also strengthens our fundraising base for free speech TV. The more viewers we have, there's always a small percentage of viewers who are donors, and so the more donors we'll have as well. So that's a way that you can actually help free speech TV, even financially, without sending them money. The second ask, of course, is to send Free Speech TV some money. That's pretty straightforward. And there's two ways to do that. One is by making a one-time contribution. Call 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org during the program that you're watching and make a contribution online. Very straightforward stuff. The second way to do it is to have a regular recurring contribution where your gift is your credit card is dinged every month, and that need not be a huge amount of money. It's the predictability is actually the factor or the variable there that is so very important, is that free speech TV, I've talked about this a lot, I don't need to explain this in great detail right now because you've probably already heard it 30 times, but having that ability to do budgeting, to know going into the future that, we've got this number of people giving this amount of money, that's important stuff. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. There's a number of premiums that Free Speech TV offers with your gifts. When you make these are all for one-time gifts. There's, with a $20 gift, there is your choice between the Free Speech TV sticky sticker, like a bumper sticker kind of sticker, or the Free Speech TV clear sticker, like the clingy kind of stick-it-on-glass sticker. With a $50 gift, there is the Free Speech TV canvas tote bag, which is, suitable for groceries or books or shopping or, picnicking, all kinds of things. It's a very, very nice canvas tote bag in two different designs, by the way. You can pick one. With the $75 gift, you have a choice between a Free Speech TV hat or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug with my mug on it, with a $75 gift. Only available here. Sure to be a collector's item someday. With a $100 gift, you have a choice of the Free Speech TV notebook and pen or the Free Speech TV socks. With a $120 gift, the Free Speech TV t-shirt or the Hidden History of American Healthcare, my newest book, How Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich. $240 gift, the virtual meet and greet. $360 gift, Thom Hartmann University gift box, the socks, the bumper sticker, the Hidden History of Healthcare, the mug and the hat. And a $1,000 gift. Get in line to come visit us here in Portland, and we'll hang out together and I'll buy you a lunch. Those are the goodies, but mostly here's your chance to be a part of something extraordinary. This little engine that could, this wonderful television network, Free Speech TV. Please call now. Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. So people wonder, why militias all of a sudden? How is it that all kinds of Americans are showing up with assault weapons in the Capitol building, trying to assassinate the Vice President of the United States and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and stop the counting of the presidential votes, the Electoral College votes, Where did this come from? You know, the last time we saw an armed uprising against the federal government in the United States was 1861. It was the Confederacy. Is this a Confederacy rising again? Well, yeah, there is a huge white supremacist element to it. In fact, I'd say it's one of the primary animating impulses. But what really got these things going, these militias going, was the Heller decision written by the opinion written by Antonin Scalia and published on June 26, 2008. And it has crazy language in it, basically begging for militias. I share it with you in a special video over at thomhartmann.com. Check it out. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. So, by the way, Stormy Daniels says, well, here's the setup. Donald Trump was the Holyfield Belford fight. This guy's like in his 50s, I think. Late 50s, yeah. And he's in the boxing ring because the guy who was supposed to be there got COVID. But in any case, I mean, it was pathetic. The whole match that Donald Trump was paid an obscene amount of money to call on 9/11. This is what he did instead of commemorating 9/11. It lasted 81 seconds. Stormy Daniels comes out and says, yeah, that's about right. So what are your thoughts on the filibuster? What are your thoughts on what we do about COVID? Let me just expand on this just a little bit here. And because I think this is just a very, and then I'll pick up your phone calls. But I think that this is, frankly, a really important topic. And how do they get away with killing more than themselves? And by the way, Denmark, this is truly breathtaking, right? This is where we could be right now. And, would love to hear your thoughts on how we might get there. Denmark has lifted all COVID curves. No more COVID limitations, no more any of that stuff, right? Everything's good in Denmark now. Why? Because they introduced vaccine passports 6 months ago in March of this year. I don't know if that's exactly 6 months. I'd have to count on my fingers, but a while ago, in the spring, they introduced vaccine passports, and they began vaccinating people. 96% of people 65 or older are vaccinated in Denmark, and 73% of the rest of their whole population. And because that doesn't include kids, basically what that means is every adult in Denmark is vaccinated for all practical purposes. And so on Saturday, this was day before yesterday, they had a sold-out concert in Copenhagen. 50,000 people, the first in Europe. This is how this story from France 24, the television network France 24, starts. With no masks in sight, buzzing offices and concerts drawing tens of thousands, Denmark on Friday ditches vaccine passports in nightclubs, ending its last COVID curb. They were abolished at all venues starting September 1st, except nightclubs, and now they've opened it for nightclubs. Emil Bendix, a 26-year-old concert goer, says, being in the crowd, singing like before, it almost made me forget COVID and everything we've been through these past months. Loni Simonson, an epidemiologist, said, we are aiming for free movement. What will happen now is that the virus will circulate and it will find the ones who are not vaccinated, which is just a very tiny fragment of Danish society. Like many countries, Denmark has, throughout the pandemic, implemented public health and social measures to reduce transmission. But at the same time, this is from the World Health Organization's emergency officer. Her name is Catherine Smallwood. But at the same time, it has greatly relied on individuals and communities to voluntarily comply. And they have in Denmark. Because they haven't had a right-wing political party or a right-wing media. There's no Fox News in Denmark. There's nobody, well, they have right-wing media. I mean, I did my show from Copenhagen. I interviewed the guy, Peter Morgensen, as I recall his name was, who was the publisher of the newspaper that published the Muslim cartoons that had all the blowback back in the day. And he's a right winger. But the right wingers in Denmark are not saying don't get vaccinated. They don't have right wing idiots in Denmark, anti-vax idiots. At this moment, in the entire country, now keep in mind this country is only about 6 million people, but in the entire country there's only 130 people in the hospital. They started giving the third dose to people last week. Why can't we do that here? Doug in Portland. Hey, Doug, what's on your mind?
Hi, am I on?
You are on the air. What's up, Doug?
Oh, great. Well, thank you. Well, first off, a little segue that I read your ADD books years ago, and I really appreciated them. And through helping my son realize that I, too, had that type of personality.
Yeah, same here. That's how I figured out.
Yeah. It was just helpful and confirming. My thought was really a little different twist on your rant about the filibuster, which is simply that it seems to me Republicans get a pass when they have the filibuster because they can show their indignation, they can stomp, and they can, rant, but they don't have to pay the price of the real consequences of that legislation.
Right.
Pick a wedge issue because they're just horrific, and they don't. I think it's a little bit like the abortion bill that was just passed in Texas, where now they have to really defend it.
Now they own it. Before they just talked about it, and the only people who took them seriously was that little tiny anti-abortion slice of their base.
And if they can just push it and talk about it, but not really have to deal with it, I think it's better for them. So, I'm just throwing it out there as a different lens on what you were sharing.
Yeah, I think in a way, Doug, you've captured the essence of what I was trying to say, which is that Republicans talk this line. But they know deep down inside that if they actually privatized Medicare, destroyed Social Security, did away with all welfare programs, if they actually put into place the stuff that they're talking about, they'd never get elected again. And of course, they don't put it into place when they do have power, like during the Bush and during the Trump presidencies, because Democrats filibuster it. So Democrats are essentially giving Republicans cover. And then on the other hand, when Democrats come forward with policies that people actually want, as we can see in all, states all across the country, then the Republicans cancel those from happening. And so Americans think both parties are the same. And by the way, the Democratic policies are very popular in Democratic states. And Democratic states have very, very high levels of voter engagement because they make voting easy. Republicans are having to suppress the vote in the states that they control because their policies are so unpopular where they've been able to pull them off. And so, you're absolutely. Doug, thank you. Very, very well said. Karen in New Orleans. Hey, Karen, what's up?
Hey, Tom, two issues. Number one, if the Democrats don't carve out voting rights now in 2021, that means we're going to lose in 2022.
I believe you're right.
And Mitch McConnell is going to do it the first day he's in power. Kill the filibuster now or wait for Mitch to do it in 2023.
Well, hang on just a second, Karen, if I may. I think he's going to preserve the filibuster because, like I said, the filibuster gives cover for the Republicans. So they can keep getting people voting for them without having to actually take responsibility for passing the legislation that they say they're in favor of.
I agree, and I follow your premise, but I just know that Democrats are too easy, and they don't see Mitch for what he's going to do it. The minute he gets it, he's going to do it.
If there's something important, but the two things that really matter to Mitch, he's already blown up the filibuster for right-wing judges and tax cuts.
Well, that's pretty disgusting right there.
Yeah.
Second issue is that Manchin and these faux Democrats that are against doing the reconciliation bill,
right.
They are deathly afraid of losing their donors' tax cuts.
Yep.
But more importantly, they're afraid of losing their own tax cuts.
Yep. And Joe Manchin, he made $500,000 off coal just last year. He started a couple of different coal companies in West Virginia. His son owns the biggest one, which is the one that he got $500,000 from. The Intercept did some amazing reporting on this. And so he's up to his eyeballs in coal. So of course he's not going to want a Green New Deal. And B, he doesn't want to pay taxes on that money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe they ought to just carve out coal out of the bill.
Yeah.
And give him what he wants.
Because I'm sorry,
nobody else wants coal, and nobody else
coal.
is going to build coal-fired power plants.
Yeah, the market is kind of killing coal anyway.
Exactly. But Trump's going to bring it back, you know?
Yeah, if he can. Yes. And
I'm in the aftermath of Ida.
How you
I
doing?
couldn't see your show for a week, and I thought I was going through withdrawals.
Oh, well.
I couldn't wait until my TV came back on.
Well, I am so glad, Karen, that you're on the backside of Ida. You know, that you've...
we got another one headed our way, so we'll see.
Okay.
I have not unpacked from evacuation.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Sorry, that guy always steps on us. Thank you, Karen. It's great talking to you. We'll be right back. It's 45 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. Annie in Sugar Grove, North Carolina. Hey, Annie, what's on your mind?
Oh, I just wanted to add to your story about that hospital in Alabama.
Okay.
I live in a small rural county in North Carolina, like 6 miles from Tennessee. And the doctors here at the local hospital, they held a care vigil last week. And there's a huge article about it and what they're up against. One of the doctors reminded me of what happened to that guy in Alabama. This doctor said she personally called up 8 hospitals in 2 different states looking for beds for her patients that need emergent specialty surgery.
Wow.
You know, like if I had an appendicitis attack, I would be dead here. I would be dead.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, there was a guy last week who died of gallstones.
Right.
I mean, these are conditions that, back in the 19th century, they killed people. But,
right.
You know.
And then the director of the spiritual care portion of the hospital, she says, and I know this woman personally, she says, never in my 23 years have I encountered anything so horrific as the last 18 months. Illness and death during the course of the COVID-19 pandemic is qualitatively different.
Yeah.
She says she sees these, her staff, the staff working in the hospital, they're exhausted, they've got fear and pain and anger. And one of the doctors said that these medical people, they just can't go on like this much longer.
Maybe they need to start, maybe instead of setting up their triage centers and their overflow centers in the parking lots of the hospitals, they need to start setting them up in the offices of the local Republican Party.
Yeah. Virginia Fox is my representative, and then my 2 senators are Tom Tillis and Richard Burr. And Richard Burr's office had the audacity to say, oh, no, he's been promoting vaccines since the very beginning. I'm like, where? I've seen no press releases. I've seen nothing.
Right.
You know, it's just, I am so sick of doing everything right, and we are back worse than where we were this time last year.
Yeah.
And these people in the county I live in, oh, my gosh, they didn't wear a mask, then they didn't get a shot, and they're still not wearing masks. And they're just walking around like, oh, I can do whatever I want.
And they're dropping like flies.
Anyway. Yeah. And it's not mentioned in the obituaries. None of this is talked about of these people. I mean, the only reason there's this article is because I think the doctors, said we're going to do this.
So what did the article, you said they did a care vigil. What does that mean?
Well, they stood outside and they just testified as to what their experience is going on. It says...
And the local news media showed up for it?
Just a small little paper here in Watauga County.
Yeah.
Doctors hold care vigil as they struggle with the COVID-19 surge. It's just, this one doctor says, the first wave broke our backs, but I've never been more proud to stand beside my brave colleagues. This wave has broken our spirits.
Wow.
It's a whole page article. With 3 8x5 pictures and then maybe one 8x.
And this is all because the GOP thinks that if they can keep the pandemic going, it'll hurt the economy and it'll hurt Joe Biden.
Oh yeah, that's what their goal is. They want him to fail.
Right.
Outright. I mean, they just do. And my three that I have, my two senators and my one representative, they're worthless.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Well, hopefully, Annie, this is going to mobilize some voters. Annie, thank you very much for the call. Great talking with you. Thanks, and thanks for watching with Free Speech TV. We'll be right back. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. Hey, we have a new video over at ThomHartmann.com. It's about this movement that has, it's being characterized in the media as being just, fringe wackadoodles, crazy people on YouTube, stuff like that, who are talking about how Democrats are torturing children to get the adrenochrome out of them, and Hillary Clinton is eating babies, and the ship in the Suez Canal, and how the really interesting one now, how if you get the vaccine for COVID that it will change your race. Yes, something that will make white people absolutely hysterical. The problem is, this isn't just the Flat Earth Society. These aren't the people that we used to laugh at. This isn't just a few crazies on the edge. They just had a convention in Oklahoma, a serious convention where they were calling for Democrats to be put in front of a firing squad and shot. You need to check this out. It's over at ThomHartmann.com. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Adam in New Orleans. Hey, boy, a lot of calls from New Orleans. You guys, you must have gotten your power back on too, Adam.
Yeah, we were fortunate. We had a generator. Thanks for asking, Tom. Reason I'm calling, one of the worst things that Trump did was weaponize the Department of Justice. Now, Ryan Grimm's article on Manchin's daughter and wife, how they basically abused monopoly power associated with the EpiPen, raising the cost from $100 to $600, which probably killed people. Basically, if Biden tries to use that as a stick to get Manchin to come off of his position on the filibuster, isn't that weaponizing the Department of Justice? I'm trying to figure out. I mean, we somehow we've got to get Manchin off his position, but I can't figure out.
It's using the DOJ is not the way to do it. Number one. Number two, his daughter has left the company, and in fact, the way that she did it is if my understanding is correct, and let me just qualify this by saying, I haven't done a deep dive on this. I've just read a couple of articles in the New York Times and other places. But my understanding is that Heather Bresch, I think is her name, Joe Manchin's daughter, that company was sold to a much larger international company and has closed down its West Virginia factory, throwing like 1,000 people out of work. And this was just a couple of weeks ago. And just basically walked away with the money. His daughter's a multimillionaire now. His son is a multimillionaire because the energy companies that Joe Manchin started, the coal companies, he has turned over to his son. He still owns some stock in them. He made $500,000 last year in dividends, apparently, according to the reporting in The Intercept. But I don't think that the DOJ should be going after this. I think that this is up to the voters of West Virginia. And there is a huge movement in West Virginia. I was talking yesterday with Troy Miller, who has been my editor on so far on all of the Hidden History books. He lives in West Virginia. Troy and I used to work together in Washington, D.C. when our show was in D.C. And in fact, he was a producer of the show for a while. And Troy is very active now in West Virginia politics. He's from West Virginia. He was born there, grew up there, has a really beautiful, thick West Virginia accent. And there are two major groups that are working kind of hand in glove, progressive groups in West Virginia. One of them specifically, I think it's called StopJoeManchin.something, either com or org. But I tweeted it. If you want to, actually on Sunday, I tweeted that group out. If you want to see it, just go look at my Twitter feed and to get the right URL and the right group. And, Manchin's not up for re-election for another 4 years or 3.5 years. But there's, and of course, the freak out is, oh my God, if you take him down, he'll get replaced by a Republican. But the people in West Virginia, on the ground in West Virginia, point out that Bernie beat Hillary in the 2016 primary in West Virginia by like 30 points. I mean, it was massive. It was a blowout. What the reason why West Virginia went for Trump so overwhelmingly in the last two elections was that, particularly in 2016, actually, was that Trump was saying that he was going to stop neoliberalism, that he was going to end the business as usual. He was going to bring back our factories. He was going to tax rich people. He was going to do a bunch of stuff that he never succeeded in doing. Bernie was saying he was going to do those same things. So if you get a genuine progressive in West Virginia, they will vote for West Virginia was a blue state for a long, long, long time. And so I think that that's the way to do it, Adam. And for people out of state is to support those organizations in state.
It's more a function of time, and I appreciate what you're saying, Tom.
You're not going to stop him in less than 4 years, though.
Yeah. Oh, then the Democratic agenda is toast.
Well, maybe not. I mean, you and I are probably not going to stop him, and this movement in West Virginia may or may not be able to pressure him. But the one person who does have enormous power over Joe Manchin is Joe Biden. And that's where I started my op-ed today and my rant tonight, this morning, which is that, the word has leaked out from Chuck Schumer's office that he had a phone conversation with Joe Biden over the weekend or last Friday, in which Biden said, I'm ready to start calling these senators who are opposed to the filibuster and, bending some arms. And, I'm assuming that that's going to be happening this week. And so, stay tuned, I guess.
I hope so.
I hope so, too. And for the moment, we have to remember, Joe Manchin is a Democrat. He is caucusing with the Democrats. By and large, he's voting with the Democrats. I think, he's got a couple of areas where he wants to, which have to do with fossil fuels and taxes, where he's dancing to the tune of the Koch agenda, basically, and all of the fossil fuel and petrobillionaires. And he himself is a fossil fuel multimillionaire. And so, you've got to just kind of take that into consideration. But outside of those things, Joe Manchin actually has some pretty good positions. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Let's work. And I think that's why Bernie was so gentle with him on, Meet the Press or Face the Nation or whatever the show was on CNN over the weekend where Dana Bash was talking to both of them. She did a really good job with that. Adam, I got to run, but thank you for the call. And thanks for watching us there in New Orleans. We'll be back. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More information at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. CB Distillery for sleeping and pain relief. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. Dinovite, only the best all-natural pet supplements. More info at dinovite.com. Annie's Kit Clubs, creativity delivered right to your door. More info at annieskitclubs.com/Tom. Wild Alaskan Company, delicious, sustainably sourced seafood delivered right to your door. More information at wildalaskancompany.com/Tom. And Mack Weldon, reinventing men's basics. More info at mackweldon.com/Tom.
We say fight back!
Well, it's a brand new week, and it's a brand new opportunity to support Free Speech TV. And what an extraordinary thing, right? To have a television network that consistently tells the truth, that has some just brilliant programming from everything from news to opinion to interactive programming to diverse voices on multiple dimensions. This is something that the Free Speech TV is a network that is really and truly unique in the United States and worthy of your support. And I'm honored to be on the network. I'm happy to be on the network. I hope that this program is of value to you. I know that the network is of value to me beyond my own program. I mean, just the existence of a progressive television network in the United States seems just so very, very important. So I have two asks for you today. The first is real simple. Would you please make an effort today or this week, just kind of a commitment to yourself, to not just tell a few other people about Free Speech TV, but get at least one other person. Duplicate yourself. Get at least one other person to watch a couple of programs on Free Speech TV and with the goal of bringing in one more regular viewer, one more person who is, who regularly likes Free Speech TV. Think about, think about a friend of yours, somebody that you know, who you think might have an interest in. Would they probably bond best with me or with Stephanie or with Randy or with Sonali or with Amy Goodman or David Packman? What program would really ring their bell? What program would they, and there's other programs as well. I'm sorry, I don't have everything on the top of my head, but what do you think is going to really get them hooked on Free Speech TV? And then figure out a way to, maybe invite them over to watch with you, or to watch together virtually, and you can talk on the phone while you're both watching TV, or you can say, hey, watch the first half hour of the show and then let's talk, or something like that. Figure out a way. There's got to be ways to do this, right? Creativity here. This is your opportunity to bring in new people, because we need to expand our base for Free Speech TV and have more people participating, more people viewing. Of course, we want to get the message out wider. I mean, a good, solid, informational, progressive message, but that also strengthens our fundraising base for Free Speech TV. The more viewers we have, there's always a small percentage of viewers who are donors, and so the more donors we'll have as well. So that's a way that you can actually help Free Speech TV, even financially, without sending them money. The second ask, of course, is to send Free Speech TV some money. That's pretty straightforward. And there's two ways to do that. One is by making a one-time contribution. Call 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org during the program that you're watching and make a contribution online. Very straightforward stuff. The second way to do it is to have a regular recurring contribution where your gift is your credit card is dinged every month, and that need not be a huge amount of money. It's the predictability is actually the factor or the variable there that is so very important. Is that Free Speech TV, I've talked about this a lot, I don't need to explain this in great detail right now, because you've probably already heard it 30 times, but having that ability to do budgeting, to know going into the future that, we've got this number of people giving this amount of money, that's important stuff. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. There's a number of premiums that Free Speech TV offers with your gifts. When you make, these are all for one-time gifts. There's, with a $20 gift, there is your choice between the Free Speech TV sticky sticker, like a bumper sticker kind of sticker, or the Free Speech TV clear sticker, like the clingy kind of stick it on glass sticker. With a $50 gift, there is the Free Speech TV canvas tote bag, which is, suitable for groceries or books or shopping or, picnicking, all kinds of things. It's a very, very nice canvas tote bag in two different designs, by the way. You can pick one. With the $75 gift, you have a choice between a Free Speech TV hat or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug with my mug on it, with a $75 gift. Only available here. Sure to be a collector's item someday. With a $100 gift, you have a choice of the Free Speech TV notebook and pen or the Free Speech TV socks. With a $120 gift, the Free Speech TV t-shirt or the Hidden History of American Healthcare, my newest book, How Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich. $240 gift, the virtual meet and greet. $360 gift, Thom Hartmann University gift box, the socks, the bumper sticker, the Hidden History of Healthcare, the mug and the hat, and a $1,000 gift. Get in line to come visit us here in Portland, and we'll hang out together and I'll buy you a lunch. Those are the goodies, but mostly it's here's your chance to be a part of something extraordinary. This little engine that could, this wonderful television network, Free Speech TV. Please call now. Way of Knowing by Robert Wolf.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. So over the weekend, Amy Coney Barrett, introduced by Mitch McConnell at the Mitch McConnell Center, or something that's named after him, to a crowd of right-wing Republicans, gives a speech about how important it is that the court not be seen as partisan. Right. What do we do about this? I mean, here we have a Supreme Court that was stacked and packed. Mitch McConnell, of course, forbade President Obama from putting his guy on, Merrick Garland, for over 400 days, for a year, and then throws Amy Coney Barrett on before Ruth Bader Ginsburg is even in the ground. I mean, literally, when it's just a couple of weeks before the election. This is, and also with regard to Anthony Kennedy. There are credible stories out there that because Anthony Kennedy's son was the guy who signed off on $1 billion worth of loans to Donald Trump and his organization, that Trump was essentially blackmailing Kennedy into leaving. And I'm not absolutely asserting that, but I think it's something that should be checked into. But in any case, we've got this court that has just gone off the edge. What do we do about it? Meagan Hatcher-Mays is on the line with us. Meagan is a lawyer and director of the Democracy Policy for Indivisible.org. Important Meagan is her Twitter handle, or Indivisible Team. And Meagan, welcome back to the program. Roe v. Wade, Texas is really making this clear for us what the impact of this is, because most people don't pay attention to most of what the Supreme Court does. But what are your thoughts on how best America should respond to this?
Yeah, it's very funny to hear Amy Coney Barrett say that, the court shouldn't be perceived as partisan. There's obviously a role the justices play there in making sure people don't see it that way, as though they are partisans, which is what they are doing when they, effectively strike down Roe v. Wade, starting in Texas, but, it won't stop there. So I think the first thing that Congress needs to do is, codify Roe and do all that stuff, pass a federal bill to protect reproductive health care for women and people who can get pregnant. But this isn't going to stop. I mean, the whole reason that, there's 6 conservatives on the Supreme Court, and these particular, is because they want to overturn Roe versus Wade. So really the only solution at this point to fix the court, to restore balance to the court, is to add seats. We really do need to pass a bill that would add 4 seats, so that the outsized influence of the conservatives on the Supreme Court doesn't have a negative impact on all the rest of us.
Right. And it's not like this hasn't been done before. John Adams shrank the court because he didn't want Thomas Jefferson, who was the incoming president, and these two guys, they hadn't even spoken. I mean, Jefferson was Adams' vice president, but they had not spoken in 2 years because Jefferson was so upset about the Alien Sedition Act. So Adams shrinks the court, Jefferson expands the court. When Lincoln was assassinated, there was an opening on the court, and the Republicans did not want shall we say, the progressives of the era did not want Andrew Johnson, a right-wing Democrat and slave owner, to be able to add somebody to the court. And so they shrank the size of the court. And then as soon as he was out of the White House and Ulysses Grant was in, they expanded the court again. So this isn't like it's not like it's never happened before. Some of the pushback to let's expand, and of course Franklin Roosevelt tried it in 37. Actually didn't try it, just talked about it. And that was enough to get Justice Owen Roberts, who was kind of the head of the Four Horsemen, the guy who was preventing the court from, or was threatening to blow up Social Security and a lot of the rest of the New Deal. It got him to change his vote. And just an amazing story about how political pressure, Wikipedia notwithstanding, and a lot of the kind of revisionist history out there, FDR had a hell of a lot of support for expanding the court back then. But he ultimately didn't have to because the court changed their positions. Do you think that a genuine threat could cause this court to wake up the way that the court did in 1937? I'm skeptical of that. And B, the main objection to what you're suggesting that I keep hearing in mainstream media is, Democrats expand the court by 4 people, and as soon as Republicans have power, they'll shrink the court by 4 people. And it's just. And I'm like, bring it on, but I'm wondering what you're thinking.
Yeah, well, so for the first thing, I actually think you can kind of read Amy Coney Barrett's comments over the weekend as sort of a version of what happened in the 30s when FDR was kind of threatening to add seats to the court. Instead of, them changing their minds, which I think you're right is completely, pretty unlikely. I mean, the reason they were picked is because they are sure things. Their votes are a surefire bets. For conservatives, instead of them changing their minds, I think it's more likely that you'll see kind of what Amy Coney Barrett said, where it's like what you are actually seeing is not happening. So kind of like a Trump-esque kind of gaslighting. So for her to say, the court isn't partisan, it is, obviously. She knows that, as she knows that the 6 conservatives on the court are kind of trying to help Republicans either by chipping away at the Voting Rights Act or by overturning Roe v. Wade. So she knows that. So I think that their new PR plan is to just pretend like that's not happening, to say, you have nothing to worry about. The court is fine. It's not political. It's not partisan. And so it's up to us to just not believe that. Just not believe her when she says things like that. But I think that's coming from a place of fear in the same way that, you had justices changing their votes back under FDR. They're afraid that if people notice what they're doing and get upset, then things will change. And if things change, that means they will lose a lot of their conservative power on the Supreme Court, which is why it's so important for progressives to be really pushing for expansion. There's bills pending in Congress as we speak to add 4 seats. You don't need a constitutional amendment to do it. You can do it through simple legislation. So which is, if you get rid of it, then Republicans will get rid of it when they're in power again, and they'll undo everything that we did. And to that I say, let's go ahead. Let them. Let's do good stuff now. And if Republicans want to undo all the good stuff that we did now, that's on them. But that shouldn't stop us from doing something good now while we have the chance. And right now that means adding seats to the Supreme Court. Sure, they might retaliate, but Mitch McConnell already did that. I mean, him holding open a seat for a year, he didn't need an excuse to do that. He just did it. He's a bad person who doesn't really need an excuse to do bad things. So we might as well take advantage of the trifecta that we've got, fix the courts, fix our democracy, because right now the court is acting as a hindrance to democracy by gutting the Voting Rights Act and making it more difficult for people to vote. So we have to do something about that. Otherwise, you'll be kind of stuck in a feedback loop of minority control from the court to the presidency to the legislative branch.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I feel the same way about the filibuster. People are, if you blow up the filibuster, then when Republicans have power, they'll do terrible things. I'm like, cool, let them do it. Let the people see what they actually want. Right now they're hiding behind the filibuster when Democrats are or when they're in control and Democrats are filibustering them. Let's have democracy. We've been preaching it for 200 years. Let's actually have it in the United States Senate. But that's kind of a digression. Back to the Supreme Court. Article 3, Section 2 of the Supreme Court clearly states that Congress not only can regulate the court, which has been interpreted to mean, define the number of justices, define the budget, define, pay for the building where they meet, all that kind of stuff. Even set rules for the court, like, if Congress wanted to, they could require cameras in the court, for example. So not only regulate the court, but also says that Congress can define exceptions, and that's the word they use in Article 3, Section 2, to what the court can do. And, Jefferson was very outspoken about this, was furious when Marbury versus Madison was passed, the whole concept of judicial review. But what I found fascinating, when I wrote a book on the Supreme Court about 2 years ago, and when I was doing the research on it, I found this memo from John Roberts, back when he was working for Ronald Reagan. And he produced, Reagan gave him the job of figuring out how to reverse Roe v. Wade and Brown v. Board without a constitutional amendment. And Roberts did a deep dive and cites literally dozens of Supreme Court cases that have acknowledged that exceptions clause, and multiple pieces of legislation that have included it, but it has just never been subject to judicial review, where and tells Reagan, here's what you do. You pass a law saying, Congress says segregated schools are okay, and the court may not rule on this. Congress says states may make abortion illegal, and the Supreme Court may not rule on this. And this will comport with Article 3, Section 2. It's called court stripping or jurisdiction stripping. I'm guessing you're familiar with it as an attorney. Yeah. And I'm wondering if there is, and I lay out Roberts' memo at some extensive length in my book, because he builds this really strong case for this. Reagan ultimately thought the political damage would be so great that he wouldn't do it. But is anybody talking about that?
It's one of the reforms that I think is out there. I think it's not gotten as much attention as adding seats. I think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? So I think the reason why John Roberts wanted to jurisdiction strip, if you will, strip the court of jurisdiction, it was very specifically about abortion. To my knowledge. And the reason that he wanted to do that is because he wanted states to pass really bad, really restrictive abortion laws and make it so courts could not hear those cases. Basically, we're basically ending us up in the situation that we're in now, where it's kind of a race to the bottom as far as how restrictive these abortion laws can go. So there's a flip. So on the one hand, you could strip the court of jurisdiction to say, hear any case that it was, or hear a challenge to any law that was, say, passed under the Commerce Clause, which is like the main way that Congress passes laws. Mm-hmm. That way, if Democrats were in charge, they could pass a really expansive social safety net and the court could not hear any challenges to it. The flip of that is that if you strip jurisdiction for any law that, say, is like an anti-discrimination law, and Republicans do a version of it where you can discriminate against LGBT people or black people or people of color, that would not be subject to judicial review either. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. I think it's a very interesting concept. Yeah, it is. But it's not one that's gotten a ton of attention.
Yeah, forgive my interruption. I just see we're going to hit a break in 30 seconds. I can't control. When George Mason presented that to Thomas Jefferson and said, what about that scenario? Who should decide what is and isn't constitutional? If not the Supreme Court, Jefferson's response was the people themselves, which is why Larry Kramer, the dean of the Stanford Law School, titled his book, The People Themselves, in which he argued against judicial review.
Yeah.
So
I think it's really a really interesting idea. It's hard to imagine since it's been hundreds of years, but anything's possible. Anything would be an improvement over what we've got now.
Overturn 200 years of precedent. Anyhow, Meagan Hatcher-Mays, lawyer and director of the Democracy Policy for Indivisible.org. Important Meagan and Indivisible team over on Twitter. Meagan, great talking with you again. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom.
Yep. Have a great one. We'll be right back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
18 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Kathy in Arroyo Grande, California. Hey, Kathy, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I want to thank you for taking my call. I've been an admirer of your work for many years. I wanted to make the point of, I have my oldest son will not get vaccinated. He's in his 40s.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Kathy.
Thank you. And I'd like to offer this suggestion that the vaccination status of prominent anti-vaxxers should be made public. I want to just give a quick reasoning. My son graduated from college in 1999, and early in the Bush administration, I read the book Crimes Against Nature by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I was so impressed by his work as an environmental defense lawyer. He was speaking in Santa Barbara. I brought my two sons to see him, and we were both blown away by his intelligence and his dedication to his work. And so fast forward now, my son has followed the work of Robert F. Kennedy, and now he's been sending me things from his website or his group, the Children's Health Defense Fund and the Defenders.
Right.
And he and Robert F. Kennedy has come out with a book that is just recently on Amazon called The Real Anthony Fauci. And so in it, he speaks down of Anthony Fauci. He says that his tracking and tracing is against constitutional rights and to privacy and travel, and that he doesn't want freedom of religion. He wants to close churches. All of this. So my son, for 20 years, has thought that I admire Robert F. Kennedy. I tried to tell him I still admire him as an environmental defense lawyer, but he's not a doctor.
Right.
But now,
and we all have blind spots.
Right, but now he's come out with this book against the main doctor.
Right.
And so I'm wondering if he falls into the category like these Fox News people who have all their families and everybody have gotten the vaccination, but they're coming out against the vaccination. And I think that might be the only thing that turns my son around, is if he finds out that perhaps Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been vaccinated, or his children have been.
Well, I would be surprised if he hasn't. I mean, I've known him for years, not well, but I mean, he's been on the show a number of times too. And we've talked about vaccines on this show. Now, this was way before COVID. And the point that he made was that he's vaccinated against all the childhood diseases, as are all of his children. He just thought that they were giving too many vaccines too quickly and too early in life, and that it was having negative consequences, which I don't think is a particularly controversial discussion. But the COVID stuff, and I haven't been following Bobby on the COVID stuff, so I don't know exactly what he's saying. But half the Republican members of Congress refuse to say if they're vaccinated, but there's a fairly high level of certainty that they all are. I can't speak to Bobby, and so I can't give you that, that ammunition you need. I do think, though, that I just don't know the best way to get through to these people, Kathy. I'm sorry. I wish you the very best, and I'm sorry I don't have a magic bullet for you. It's 22 minutes, and thank you for the call. It's 22 minutes past the hour. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. In addition to the free newsletter that we have over at ThomHartmann.com, which gives you literally a link to every story or article I've talked about throughout the day, every day, comes into your email box every day. There's no charge. In addition to that, and my daily rants, which are free of advertising and free of charge over at HartmannReport.com, we also produce a weekly video. This week's video is about how power companies around the country, for-profit power companies, 100% of the time, these power companies around the country are making it harder and harder and more expensive for people to install solar in their homes. All kinds of ways of trying to block people from doing this. And increasingly, they're getting support from Republican politicians both at the local and the state level. It's something that we really need to know about, we need to be paying attention to, and we need to be aggressively pushing back on. You can check it out over at thomhartmann.com and at hartmannreport.com. Or a couple of other points here that I wanted to make with regard to the GOP. You know, they really clearly believe that if they can keep COVID rolling along, that's going to reflect poorly on Joe Biden. And in fact, that has been the coverage. You've got, reporters, not opinion pieces, reporters in the New York Times. Eric Bollard is calling them out, and God bless him for it. He's got a great newsletter that I subscribe to. It's called Press Run, as I recall. And he says, we're witnessing one of the great mass brainwashings in American political history as millions of Fox News COVID zombies swallow an ocean of lies, distortion, and misinformation. Yet the press blames Biden. And he says, they just, like the press doesn't want to report on conservative media. It's like they don't want to take them on. But here's what we're actually seeing. If you go to thewriting.com, the RIGHTING, the newsletter, the top news headlines from the far right for the rest of us. Let me just share some of these headlines with you. These are examples of how people like I had a caller earlier who was like, my son won't get vaccinated. He's 40 years old. And because he's following some of these anti-vaxxers, what do I do? This is what we're up against. And I don't have an easy answer for how to combat it other than I think that, lobbying the corporate and mainstream media to start telling the truth about what's going on in the right wing with these lies is damn important. It shouldn't just be the Writing and Eric Bollard and me who are doing this. But Flag and Cross, these are right-wing publications. Flag and Cross, the headline, there's no turning back after Biden's vaccine mandate. The new mandate that Biden has decided to impose aren't just anti-American. The word evil gets thrown around a lot these days, but in this case, it fits the situation. It's evil to save people's lives? Really? Washington Examiner, Biden's vaccine mandate theater. Black and Hispanic communities have far lower vaccination rates than white communities. Where is the concern for equity? Well, first of all, it's not true. And secondly, it's not theater. This has to do with people dying. Boston Herald, Biden has the gall to tell us his patience is wearing thin. They write, imagine if Trump had said his patience with the American people was wearing thin, or if he threatened Democrat governors. It just goes on about calling Biden an ill-tempered authoritarian. Amazing. The war against COVID-19 is over, and it's time for surrender over in Town Hall. It's terrible.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
What can be done about the Republican Party thinking that they can take down Biden and the Democrats by killing more Americans through COVID? Well, it's a brand new week, and it's a brand new opportunity to support Free Speech TV. And what an extraordinary thing, right? To have a television network that consistently tells the truth, that has some just brilliant programming from everything from news to opinion to interactive programming to diverse voices on multiple dimensions. This is something that the Free Speech TV is a network that is really and truly unique in the United States and worthy of your support. And I'm honored to be on the network. I'm happy to be on the network. I hope that this program is of value to you. I know that the network is of value to me beyond my own program. I mean, just the existence of a progressive television network in the United States seems just so very, very important. So I have two asks for you today. The first is real simple. Would you please make an effort today or this week, just kind of a commitment to yourself, to not just tell a few other people about Free Speech TV, but get at least one other person. Duplicate yourself. Get at least one other person to watch a couple of programs on Free Speech TV and with the goal of bringing in one more regular viewer, one more person who is, who regularly likes Free Speech TV. Think about, think about a friend of yours, somebody that you know, who you think might have an interest in. Would they probably bond best with me or with Stephanie or with Randy or with Sonali or with Amy Goodman or David Packman? What program would really ring their bell? What program would they, and there's other programs as well. I'm sorry, I don't have everything on the top of my head, but what do you think is going to really get them hooked on Free Speech TV? And then figure out a way to, maybe invite them over to watch with you. Or to watch together virtually, and you can talk on the phone while you're both watching TV, or you can say, hey, watch the first half hour of the show and then let's talk, or something like that. Figure out a way. There's got to be ways to do this, right? Creativity here. This is your opportunity to bring in new people, because we need to expand our base for Free Speech TV and have more people participating, more people viewing. Of course, we want to get the message out wider. I mean, a good, solid, informational, progressive message, but that also strengthens our fundraising base for Free Speech TV. The more viewers we have, there's always a small percentage of viewers who are donors, and so the more donors we'll have as well. So that's a way that you can actually help Free Speech TV, even financially, without sending them money. The second ask, of course, is to send Free Speech TV some money. That's pretty straightforward. And there's two ways to do that. One is by making a one-time contribution. Call 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org during the program that you're watching and make a contribution online. Very straightforward stuff. The second way to do it is to have a regular recurring contribution where your gift is your credit card is dinged every month, and that need not be a huge amount of money. It's the predictability is actually the factor or the variable there that is so very important, is that Free Speech TV, I've talked about this a lot, I don't need to explain this in great detail right now, because you've probably already heard it 30 times, but having that ability to do budgeting, to know going into the future that, we've got this number of people giving this amount of money, that's important stuff. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. There's a number of premiums that Free Speech TV offers with your gifts. When you make these are all for one-time gifts. There's, with a $20 gift, there is your choice between the Free Speech TV sticky sticker, like a bumper sticker kind of sticker, or the Free Speech TV clear sticker, like the clingy kind of stick it on glass sticker. With a $50 gift, there is the Free Speech TV canvas tote bag, which is, suitable for groceries or books or shopping or, picnicking, all kinds of things. It's a very, very nice canvas tote bag in two different designs, by the way. You could pick one. With the $75 gift, you have a choice between a Free Speech TV hat or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug with my mug on it, with a $75 gift. Only available here. Sure to be a collector's item someday. With a $100 gift, you have a choice of the Free Speech TV notebook and pen or the Free Speech TV socks. With a $120 gift, the Free Speech TV t-shirt or the Hidden History of American Healthcare, my newest book, How Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich. $240 gift, the virtual meet and greet. $360 gift, Thom Hartmann University gift box, the socks, the bumper sticker, the Hidden History of Healthcare, the mug and the hat. And a $1,000 gift. Get in line to come visit us here in Portland, and we'll hang out together and I'll buy you a lunch. Those are the goodies, but mostly here's your chance to be a part of something extraordinary. This little engine that could, this wonderful television network, Free Speech TV. Please call now. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. You know, the media is pushing this crazy narrative that with regard to masks and vaccines and COVID and all this kind of stuff, that America is divided. Like, you know, half of us want masks and half of us don't, or half of us want vaccines. It's just not true. 75% of Americans have received at least one dose of vaccine. 70% of Americans think that we should have mask mandates in all of our schools. Only 17%, this is from the latest Pew studies, polling, only 17% of Americans are opposed to mask mandates in schools. And what we have is this tiny fringe that is being cranked. Now we're learning from China as well as from Russia and perhaps other countries, plus the people in, you know, a relatively small number of people, Trump followers, who think that tearing the country apart is a good thing and somehow it'll hurt Joe Biden and hurt the Democrats in the next election. It's crazy. I got a whole video rant about this over at ThomHartmann.com that you can check out. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And there was one other thing that I wanted to mention. Let me just get back to my one sheet here. Yeah, this is, let me just rant very briefly about this, and then I'll pick up your phone calls. I think it was Friday, actually, the Justice Department, or the Pentagon, has released a long-suppressed report that on Saudi Arabia's connections to 9/11 that has revealed, this from ProPublica, that has revealed the Saudi religious officials stationed in the United States had more significant connections to the two hijackers than has been previously known. James Crinder, one of the attorneys working for the plaintiffs, said, and the plaintiffs are a group of families whose family members died on 9/11. This validates what we've been saying. He says the FBI agents working this case detailed a Saudi government support network that was working in 1999, 2000, and 2001 to provide the hijackers with everything they needed to mount the attacks: apartments, money, English lessons, flight school. So, I mean, there's kind of this meme floating around that a bunch of Stone Age savages out of Afghanistan decided that they were going to attack America. And, and that, of course, then justifies the brutality of a response that includes things like torture. Let's just be very clear. 9/11, and this is using the 9/11 Commission report, right? This is not controversial stuff. 9/11 was planned by a man whose family is a billionaire family, one of the wealthiest families in Saudi Arabia, the bin Laden family. They own the bin Laden Construction Group, one of the largest construction companies in the world. Osama bin Laden himself was worth hundreds of millions of dollars, so a very, very rich guy paid for this. He brought in Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, a guy with an advanced degree. I believe he has a degree in engineering. In fact, 7 of the hijackers had master's degrees in engineering. He brought in Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, himself a multimillionaire, who did the actual planning on this thing out of Germany. It wasn't done out of Afghanistan. It was done out of northern Germany, Bremen, as I recall. The hijackers themselves, the 15 Saudis, the two people from the United Arab Emirates, the one Egyptian and the one Lebanese, they all came from very wealthy multimillionaire families, every single one of them. As I said, 7 of them had master's degrees. The rest of them were college graduates. I believe there were 1 or 2 who weren't. This was not an attack done by a bunch of Stone Age barbarians in Afghanistan. This was an attack that was done by 15 Saudis, 2 people from the United Arab Emirates, and keep in mind, Saudi Arabia and the UAE got together and blockaded Qatar for months until Qatar relented and gave Jared Kushner and his family a $1 billion loan. This was done by these people and a very wealthy guy out of Egypt and a wealthy guy out of Lebanon. Let's just set the record straight on this and stop this mythologizing of 9/11. It's over now. I realize we're past the 20th birthday. or celebration rather. Excuse me, the anniversary. You hardly want to celebrate it. And I'm guessing that going forward, it's going to kind of fade into our memory, and as probably it should. I don't think it was. It was a major turning point because Bush turned it into one. But anyhow, enough of that. Let me pick up your phone calls here. Mary in Sunrise Beach, Missouri. Hey, Mary, what's up?
Oh, hold on, Tom. I got to turn off my speaker.
Okay.
Here I am.
You sound just fine.
I was
Mary.
calling about your rant about Joe Manchin earlier in your program.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that he, 99% of the time or whatever, voted with the Democrat.
Not 99%, but a large
And that sounded
percentage.
to me like you were defending him. And I was calling to tell you there is no defense for Senator Joe Manchin. And I remind you that his predecessor was Robert Byrd.
Who was a good Democrat, but Robert Byrd was also a grand wizard.
21 or 28 senators that voted against going into Iraq. And Robert Byrd kept a framed list in his office, and he called them the Brave 21 or however many of them. And so don't tell me nothing good about Joe Manchin. He is owned and operated by the coal company.
Well,
and
he
that's
owns one.
all we need to know.
Yeah.
So
he owns one, and he doesn't want his taxes raised. I get that. What I'm saying is that and I think that there is some concern about this. You have Mitch McConnell out here saying that every single day he is praying for the success of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. You have these two people being courted on a daily basis by people from the hard right and from the Republican Party. They are really trying to get this guy to flip, and Kyrsten Sinema as well. And if that happens, it would be a disaster. It is important to recognize that in many ways, including his most important vote, the first vote that's taken every 2 years, which is for who is going to be the leader of the Senate, and Joe Manchin is voting for a Democrat. So you have a Democratic Senate majority leader.
But anyway, my point of my story is the remedy to Joe Manchin's, being owned by the coal companies and voting against the interests of its own constituents is for Joe Biden to become LBJ. And he needs to slam. I had to take notes to make this call. I think Biden needs to slam Manchin's knee into Manchin's neck. Or, Joe needs to slam his knee into Manchin's neck.
Yeah.
As Manchin is on his knees. Biden can simply say, you will get not 1 cent from the DNC unless you do this.
Yeah. I don't know exactly how it needs to be said, Mary.
My last note was LBJ would have added several colorful words.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, Mary, and this is the good news, is that over the weekend it was leaked out of Chuck Schumer's office, apparently, that Schumer got a phone call from Joe Manchin, from President Joe Biden, saying, I am ready to start talking to the Democrats who don't want to end the filibuster. And I see that as good news. And yeah, I would like to see a little more LBJ out of him, and I think we're starting to. Is it Tanya in Boone, North Carolina? There's an F in front of your name, but I think that's a typo.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Hey, Tanya, what's up?
Yes, it's all Manchin, but I guess my main concern lately is I live in Western North Carolina, and I hear Fox News talking points constantly, but I never hear, like, the good points, like For the People Act would help restrict dark money donors. And Fox News people are always like, drain the swamp. Trump's going to drain the swamp. Well, why aren't Democrats pushing that talking point where you have legislation to do that? But it's like nobody hears about it.
Yeah. The Republicans are better at messaging than Democrats are, is part of the answer. Another part of the answer is that the mainstream media, if a single Republican holds a press conference and says something absurd, it gets broadcast all across the country. If a group of Democrats come out with something and say something very important and consequential to the country, it gets almost no coverage. Bernie Sanders has been traveling all around the country giving speeches to large groups in like Indiana and Iowa, to Republicans. About the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, which is, by the way, over 10 years, the $300 billion a year reconciliation bill. And it's gotten virtually no coverage at all. But Joe Manchin says, no, I don't like it. And all of a sudden, he's a media star, and he's just basking in that. I don't know how we hold our media accountable. I mean, I'll continue to call them out on it. But, and frankly, I think the Sherman Antitrust Act is the biggest way to hold the media accountable, but that's a whole other issue. You're right. Democratic messaging on this has just been terrible. Martin in Cincinnati. Hey, Martin, what's on your mind today?
Not a lot. I'm just a big fan of your show, and I just started watching it pretty recently on YouTube. Anyhow, I'm calling in regards to the statement you made about the Trump mobs in Texas and in Tacoma, Washington. Mm-hmm. And it's really from one common thought process, which is being a reactionary. That's really what I think it is. I mean, I know plenty of conservatives who hold the views, but they disregard the reactionary sentiment.
So a reactionary, by definition, is reacting to something. My theory is that and I'd love to hear your theory as soon as I tell you mine. My theory is that what you are seeing is a reaction to this neoliberal shift that America took with the Reagan Revolution and the Clinton presidency and the Trump and the Bush presidency and the Obama presidency, because we're still in neoliberal land. Low taxes, free trade, offshore manufacturing, all these things that basically Ronald Reagan brought to America. And I think, frankly, that the reaction to that is happening both on the left and the right. I think the answer to it is progressive populism, which is what Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have been pushing for a long, long time. But what do you think they're reacting to?
Well, that's the thing. They're being dog whistled by the likes of Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, et cetera, and
so they're also reacting to the rise in the percentage of the population that's not white.
They're reacting to that because while they know of their own hardship, they're being told to blame minorities and other groups for their problems and not the systemic shift itself. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is something that's been going on forever. Back in the day, back in the 70s, back in the 60s and 70s, the Republican pitch was, look out for, actually in the 60s it was, look out for those, their pitch to white working class voters, look out for black people, they're coming for your job. Then in the 70s, when the women's movement got underway, the Republican pitch was, look out for those women, they're coming after your jobs. Then when the 80s with Reagan, it was, look out for those Hispanics, they're coming for your job. And they've been doing that dance now, for 30 years, or 40 years, arguably. And although they kind of thrown it all together. I think that the reactionary politics, I think you nailed it, Martin. And we need to call it what it is. It really is reactionary politics. And it's a reaction to a genuine change in America that has genuinely damaged large swaths of the American public. Martin, thank you for the call. And needs to be addressed. I mean, we need to have a conversation in America about these neoliberal policies, about these policies of financializing our entire economy, about ending in 1983 when Reagan stopped the enforcement of the antitrust laws. These things are important issues that don't get discussed.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's 48 minutes past the hour. And welcome back, Martin in Seattle. Hey, Martin, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, Tom. I was just thinking that we really need to memorialize 9/11, but not for any reason that we're doing now. Just as you said, it was a billionaire that planned and financed the whole thing. And if I have my facts right, it was billionaires that financed Al-Qaeda in the first place from the United States.
Well, not just billionaires. Correct? It was the U.S. government. Al-Qaeda came out of the Mujahideen, which was run by bin Laden and funded by Ronald Reagan. Well, and Jimmy Carter, too.
Right. Wasn't it pretty much a billionaire from Texas that really got the funding going?
Oh, yeah. That was before we had billionaires, actually. America didn't have any billionaires until Reagan cut the top tax rate. But he was a multi-millionaire. Okay. Yeah, he was a real estate developer. I had forgotten that. It's been a long time since I've seen Charlie Wilson's War or read about that. But, yeah, he was...
Yeah, well, I mean, again, we see these movies, and they don't really tell the whole truth. So, I mean, and again, it's the billionaires causing all this. They're kind of cozy with each other. Of course, the Bushes were totally cozy with the Saudis for a long time.
Mm-hmm. To the point that Bandar...
Well, I mean, they would go hunting together. And,
yeah. No, I was agreeing with you, Martin. Prince Sultan Bandar something or other. I forget his whole name, but Bandar sticks in my brain because George W. Bush referred to him as Bandar Bush, and he used to visit the Bush family. He was with George W. Bush, a couple of weeks. I'm pretty sure he came and visited in Crawford, Texas, before 9/11. That's that long summer where George W. Bush took the longest vacation in the history of the presidency. And in my opinion, it's because he knew that something terrible was going to happen in D.C. or New York, and he didn't want to be there. And so he hid out in Texas. And when it never happened, then he went to Florida, where his brother was the governor, where he felt safe, to talk to school kids about literacy. Really? It's like something funky going on here.
Again, it comes down to messaging, I think. We have to get to the heart of this matter and actually, state what happened. I mean, we funded the whole thing, and
well, there's another piece to that too, Martin.
It's in Afghanistan.
It's not
the
just
same thing, really.
It's not just that we helped create Al-Qaeda and funded it, in our efforts to help the Mujahideen throw the Soviets out of Afghanistan. It's not just that. It's also that when George Herbert Walker Bush wanted to have a little war, Reagan wanted to get reelected, so he had a little war in Grenada, and it worked really well for him. It raised his popularity ratings. Only a couple of people, U.S. soldiers, died in that little war. Maurice Bishop, who was the president of Grenada, went and hid hid out in Cuba, in fact, et cetera. And so George Herbert Walker Bush wanted to replicate that. He wanted to have the same thing, and so he had his 3-day war with Iraq over Kuwait, right? And he became popular about that, but the popularity faded before the election, so it didn't help him out. But as a result of that, we started staging American forces in Saudi Arabia. And the Prince bin Sultan, I think is the name, Air Force Base in Saudi Arabia, that Americans had occupied for a number of years after the first Gulf War. That was what infuriated bin Laden. And he said that over and over again. He said it in 96. He said it to the New York Times in 1998. And, of course, after 9/11, Bush pulled our soldiers out of Saudi Arabia. He gave bin Laden what he wanted. Martin, thank you. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. So for this week's special video, for the supporters of our program that we put up over at ThomHartmann.com, I stepped into the Wayback Machine, and it's really remarkable when you go back over what President Obama accomplished, and the Democrats in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, what they accomplished between 2008 and 2010 when they controlled Congress and the White House versus everything that the Republicans blocked I mean, the Democrats in those 2 years, they saved Chrysler, they saved General Motors, they've turned 800,000 monthly job losses into job gains. They increased spending and education spending, decreased the cost of student loans, all kinds of great stuff. But then when the Republicans took over, they blocked a veterans job bill, they blocked Wall Street reform, they blocked immigration reform, they blocked political ad disclosure. And this is just a little tip of the iceberg. You can see the whole video over at ThomHartmann.com. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And let's see here, Dave in Portland. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Howdy, Tom. Great show. Really enjoying your bigger picture views here. I'd like many of the callers who bring up the problem of billionaires. They pretty much own the Republican Party. And the Republican Party prefers the Department of Defense, Pentagon, over the State Department because they're opportunists about war. They prefer killing Social Security because they're opportunists about a privatized market. They prefer privatized health care because they're opportunists about the billionaire disease, the sort of hoarding disease on steroids, is what we've got to get everybody trained, focused on instead of. See, I have a bunch of Republican relatives in the Midwest, and I'm constantly trying to convince them that Joe Biden is a good guy for preferring diplomacy over war and a strong social safety net. And for God's sake, we have to address climate change. Bernie ran on an $8 trillion proposal over 10 years. 3.5 barely cuts it, let alone if Manchin knocks this down. So we've got to keep the Democrats in power. And I want to propose in a bigger picture way, because you talk about brain chemistry and what triggers them, people's allegiances and social movements at times, and I love it. We've got to, because instead of saying the Republicans want people to get sick and die from COVID, which the billionaires that own the Republican Party for opportunistic reasons do. They want us to get sick and to die and to go further into high-interest debt. Largest growing segment of consumer debt, which is over $15 trillion nationally right now, is medical debt. And they know that. They want us to get sick. They want to inherit Grandma's house because she went into debt. They want to inherit the Republican Joe's Blow who worked at the factory and died at COVID's house because he,
I'm not sure it's quite that nasty, Dave. I think there's just, the rules of the game have been changed over the last 40 years since Reagan dropped the top tax rate and essentially and Clinton deregulated the banking industry. They've been changed to the point where, there is an entire class of people who benefit from those things. But I don't think they're sitting around, rubbing their hands and cackling with glee. It's just
well, certainly not all of them. I mean, I'm not against rich people. That my conservative family will immediately say, "Hey, you're being classist," and there is something to that. And I have to. My counter is, I'm not against rich people. It's inevitable. Some people are smarter and more resourceful than others, and it should be rewarded where possible. But we need to cap it at millionaires and tax billionaires out of existence, because they do form these behind-the-scenes committees and coalitions like Project for New American Century. Yeah. They do come up with sets of opportunities.
Well, I get what you're saying, Dave, and to the extent that I agree with you, I would say we need to get money out of politics, number one, and number two, we need to return to some rational tax rates for people making over $3 or $4 million a year. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More information at HelloFresh.com, code TOM. CB Distillery for sleeping and pain relief. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. Dinovite, only the best all-natural pet supplements. More info at dinovite.com. Annie's Kit Clubs, creativity delivered right to your door. More info at annieskitclubs.com/Tom. Wild Alaskan Company, delicious, sustainably sourced seafood delivered right to your door. More information at wildalaskancompany.com/Tom. And Mack Weldon, reinventing men's basics. More info at mackweldon.com/Tom.
straight, fight back.
Well, it's a brand new week, and it's a brand new opportunity to support Free Speech TV. And what an extraordinary thing, right? To have a television network that consistently tells the truth, that has some just brilliant programming from everything from news to opinion to interactive programming to diverse voices on multiple dimensions. This is something that is, Free Speech TV is a network that is really truly unique in the United States and worthy of your support. And I'm honored to be on the network. I'm happy to be on the network. I hope that this program is of value to you. I know that the network is of value to me beyond my own program. I mean, just the existence of a progressive television network in the United States seems just so very, very important. So I have two asks for you today. The first is real simple. Would you please make an effort today or this week, just kind of a commitment to yourself, to not just tell a few other people about Free Speech TV, but get at least one other person. Duplicate yourself. Get at least one other person to watch a couple of programs on Free Speech TV and with the goal of bringing in one more regular viewer, one more person who is, who regularly likes Free Speech TV. Think about, think about a friend of yours, somebody that you know, who you think might have an interest in. Would they probably bond best with me or with Stephanie or with Randy or with Sonali or with Amy Goodman or David Packman? What program would really ring their bell? What program would they, and there's other programs as well. I'm sorry, I don't have everything on the top of my head, but what do you think is going to really get them hooked on Free Speech TV? And then figure out a way to, maybe invite them over to watch with you, or to watch together virtually, and you can talk on the phone while you're both watching TV, or you can say, hey, watch the first half hour of the show and then let's talk, or something like that. Figure out a way. There's got to be, ways to do this, right? Creativity here. This is your opportunity to bring in new people, because we need to expand our base for Free Speech TV and have more people participating, more people viewing. Of course, we want to get the message out wider. I mean, a good, solid, informational, progressive message, but that also strengthens our fundraising base for Free Speech TV. The more viewers we have, there's always a small percentage of viewers who are donors, and so the more donors we'll have as well. So that's a way that you can actually help Free Speech TV, even financially, without sending them money. The second ask, of course, is to send Free Speech TV some money. That's pretty straightforward. And there's two ways to do that. One is by making a one-time contribution. Call 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org during the program that you're watching and make a contribution online. Very straightforward stuff. The second way to do it is to have a regular recurring contribution where your gift is your credit card is dinged every month, and that need not be a huge amount of money. It's the predictability is actually the factor or the variable there that is so very important. Is that Free Speech TV? I've talked about this a lot. I don't need to explain this in great detail right now, because you've probably already heard it 30 times. But having that ability to do budgeting, to know going into the future that we've got this number of people giving this amount of money, that's important stuff. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. There's a number of premiums that Free Speech TV offers with your gifts. You know, when you make these are all for one-time gifts. There's with a $20 gift. There is your choice between the Free Speech TV sticky sticker, like a bumper sticker kind of sticker, or the Free Speech TV clear sticker, like the clingy kind of stick it on glass sticker. With a $50 gift, there is the Free Speech TV canvas tote bag, which is, you know, suitable for groceries or books or shopping or, you know, picnicking, all kinds of things. It's a very, very nice canvas tote bag in two different designs, by the way. You can pick one. With the $75 gift, you have a choice between a Free Speech TV hat or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug with my mug on it, with a $75 gift. Only available here. Sure to be a collector's item someday. With a $100 gift, you have a choice of the Free Speech TV notebook and pen or the Free Speech TV socks. With a $120 gift, the Free Speech TV t-shirt or the Hidden History of American Healthcare, my newest book, How Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich. $240 gift, the virtual meet and greet. $360 gift, Thom Hartmann University gift box, the socks, the bumper sticker, the Hidden History of Healthcare, the mug and the hat, and a $1,000 gift. Get in line to come visit us here in Portland, and we'll hang out together and I'll buy you a lunch. Those are the goodies, but mostly here's your chance to be a part of something extraordinary. This little engine that could, this wonderful television network, Free Speech TV. Please call now. This is the book Screwed.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back. We're going to do a segment here, an hour of conversations with great minds. And our guest today is Professor Sophie Bjork-James, PhD, an anthropologist, an assistant professor of the practice, Anthropology Department at Vanderbilt University, author of the new book, The Divine Institution, White Evangelicalism's Politics of the Family. She's also the co-editor of Beyond Populism, Angry Politics in the Twilight of Neoliberalism. Website is Sophie Bjork-James, SophieBjorkJames.com, and S. Bjork-James is her Twitter handle. And Professor Bjork-James, welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for writing this brilliant book. I'm very pleased to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm fascinated by the rise of white evangelicalism, and let's begin by defining terms, because this is a relatively recent phenomena. In your book, you in some ways kind of track it back to the 1940s, and but point to other milestones. Exactly how do you define the subject of your book, white evangelicalism?
Yeah, and this is it's a complicated question, because we define it in different ways, like different groups define it in different ways. So the theological definition of evangelicalism is people Christians who identify as being born again, prioritize evangelizing, and see the Bible as either literal or, like a key source that shouldn't be contested. So that's the theological definition. However, when we use it when it's used in politics and when it's used by the press, often they really, when evangelicals are referred to, they actually mean white evangelicals, because if we look at just the theological definition, most African American Christians fit that definition, but don't identify as evangelical, because they tend to see evangelicalism as about politics and often about whiteness or even racism. And so most African American Christians don't identify as evangelical. And so when it's used theologically, right, it's about this series of this kind of combination of beliefs. But when it's used by the press and in politics, it's used to explain a particular religious movement that is vastly majority white and also holds this combination of theological beliefs. And that's what I try to highlight in the book, is that we can't think about this religious movement outside of being also a racial movement.
And to what extent did this grow out of things, or at least the strength and popularity of it, grow out of things like the Brown v. Board decision in 1954 and the movement for racial justice, that really began in a big way in the United States? I mean, it had been going back all the way to the founding of the Republic in the abolition movement and whatnot, but particularly during and after World War II.
Yeah, so if we think back to the 1970s, the conservative political movement in the United States is pretty much in a shambles, right? The kind of segregation forever politicians had all lost. They all knew that they couldn't gain a national platform, much less a regional platform, being overtly racist. There was a history of economic elitism, but it wasn't really growing in influence. And so what you had is a series of politically savvy activists and advocates who saw in white evangelicalism the possibility of a political movement. So before the late 1970s, white evangelicals were a pretty diverse religious movement, right? It was really about these theological definitions of being born again and evangelizing and, seeing the Bible as literal, or at least like the center of one's kind of intellectual life. And Jimmy Carter was the first evangelical who elected into the presidency, representing a very liberal evangelical tradition. But it was really in defending segregation that first formed white evangelicals into a political movement. So after Brown v. Board of Education, hundreds of private Christian schools were formed across the southern United States, across the whole United States, but concentrated in the South, as a way of allowing for the continuation of segregated schools, in that they were de facto segregated. So under Carter, he directed the IRS to start making those schools prove that they were desegregated in fact and not just in principle. And so the IRS started to threaten these schools for losing their tax-exempt status if they couldn't prove that they were desegregating. And that formed a national movement, primarily across the South, but there was a number of organizations fighting this legislation, or fighting this IRS tactic, and they were very successful, and they really mobilized groups all across the South. And after they started to see significant successes in those activities, Jerry Falwell kind of helped to shift the framework away from defending our private Christian schools to defending Christian culture, which was de facto white Christian culture, from this new boogeyman of secular liberalism. The moral majority was formed out of these pro-segregation chapters, and that was really the emergence of the national religious right. So I argue that historically we can't understand the contemporary religious right as anything other than really a kind of response to the successes of the African-American Christian-led civil rights movement.
Yeah, and the movement to integrate our schools and our churches and just American life in general. Tell me about this guy. I'm going to play a clip here. Let me make sure I've got the right one. Yeah, here it is. This is Paul Weyrich, if I'm pronouncing his name right. This is in 1980. He's in a church basement in Dallas, Texas, talking to a group of evangelicals who are Republican activists. He's a co-founder of the Heritage Foundation. He's working on the Reagan campaign when he gives this speech. And here he is.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome, good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
Now, he shows up in your book. Tell us about this.
Yeah, and I mean, what an appropriate clip to be thinking about right now. So Paul Ehrlich is known as one of the architects of the religious right. He was had this vision for creating a new base for the conservative movement within white evangelicalism, and really helped to mobilize Jerry Falwell, who became the first national leader of the religious right, who remained really significant for decades. So Weyrach's vision was both in terms of founding the Heritage Foundation, in terms of being central to the moral majority, was to mobilize white evangelical Christians to form the base of the Republican Party. And as the clip showed, right, he had a very authoritarian view of politics, right, in terms of wanting limited government, but also was very clear about not supporting like an expansive multiracial democracy. It was very okay with limiting democracy as well.
Right, and to you in the book, you talk about traveling to Colorado Springs and your experience. In fact, it's a very personal book. We're talking with Sophie Bjork-James, who wrote The Divine Institution, this new book, White Evangelicalism. I always mangle this word. Evangelicalism's Politics of the Family. Tell us about Colorado Springs and why there.
Yeah, so I don't have any personal connection to Colorado Springs. I was very interested in studying this question that I found very intriguing, which is like what allows for the very broad spread political agreement within white evangelicalism. I was attending churches in different parts of the country and listening to Christian radio, and what I found is that in terms of churches, most church sermons are not very overtly political in terms of most pastors aren't some do, but most don't say, who you should vote for, or most won't rail against the homosexual agenda, et cetera. But white evangelicals have been voting as a bloc pretty much since the late 1970s, right? About 80% of white evangelicals vote for the Republican candidate in each election. That went up slightly in terms of support for Trump. So I was really interested in what allowed for that political agreement. So Colorado Springs is known kind of tongue-in-cheek as the Evangelical Vatican. Starting in the 90s, it attracted at one point over 100 evangelical organizations. They're including Focus on the Family, which is the most significant white evangelical institution. It has such a dominant place in Colorado Springs. It has its own marker on the freeway saying where the exit is. It received at one point so much mail it had its own zip code, because Christians would write in from all over the world asking for advice on families, and it's just very central.
It's James Dobson, right?
Right, James Dobson founded it, and then he retired about 10 years ago and then started a different family ministry that's also in Colorado Springs. But yeah, there's several large churches of between, over 7,000 members. And so it's a highly concentrated space for studying white evangelicalism. A lot of the people that I got to know through my research would talk about living in a Christian bubble where almost everyone that they spent time with was also a Christian.
Yeah, remarkable. I want to dig a little deeper into that. We're talking with Professor Sophie Bjork-James, the author of a new book, The Divine Institution, White Evangelicalism's Politics of the Family. And we'll be back in just a moment. Stick around. It's 18 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Sophie is an anthropologist and an assistant professor at Vanderbilt University in the anthropology department. And it's a brilliant book. We'll be right back. So, Sophie, when you went to Colorado Springs, would you just like show up? Here I am. I mean, tell us about the experience.
Yeah, I mean, I was nervous. I was a graduate student coming from New York City. I am not a Christian myself and was very clear with everyone that I wasn't. And so I was really expecting, a lot of prejudice or, concern about me. And I was actually really welcomed into the community. I just started emailing pastors and, Bible study leaders. Most of these large churches, even if there's 12,000 members, most people participate in these Bible study groups, which can be organized around anything from motorcycle enthusiasts, to gardeners, hiking groups, all around, studying the Bible or talking about the Bible, but also doing activities that individuals enjoy. So I just started emailing and calling, Bible study leaders and pastors, and was pretty immediately found myself in a pretty broad community of folks attending Bible. I attended about 10 different Bible study groups throughout my year of research there, interviewed around 100 evangelicals. So everyone from, youth pastors, senior pastors, women's pastors, everyday Christians, media producers. So it was I got a pretty broad glimpse about the kind of evangelical world in Colorado.
If you don't mind my asking, are you Jewish? Because there's a huge contingent of evangelicals who are literally focused on converting Jews to Christianity.
I'm not Jewish. Okay. I am unaffiliated, but okay. Yes, there is there's a large church in Colorado Springs that, prioritizes evangelizing to Jews. A lot of evangelicals believe that, Jews are God's chosen people and that God wants them to now convert to Christianity. So, but no, I was unaffiliated. And so that in some ways I was a blank slate. So a lot of people really hoped that I would convert and got slightly upset as the year went on, and I did not. To
Christianity or to evangelical Christianity?
Oh, yes.
Or both?
Both.
So did you present yourself as, I'm an anthropologist, I look at how cultures work, and I'm here to study yours?
Yep, pretty much. And, it's complicated when you are not a Christian and studying evangelicals, because they always see your presence as a chance to try to convert you. And, see that as, it's like I would have people say things like, well, I'm sure God brought you, to me for a reason. And so would see, they really work hard at trying to see everything through this religious lens. Everything from one's food choices, one's exercise habits, who one spends time with, and how one votes. I think when we think about when evangelicals are represented politically and in the press, we often are just, see them as political actors. And what was very clear through my research is that, they adopt this, religious view of the world that is very comprehensive.
Yeah, this is the lens through which they view everything. We're talking with Sophie Bjork-James about her new book, The Divine Institution. We'll be right back. It's 22 minutes past the hour. We'll be back in 1 minute. I've got to read an ad over on the commercial side of this program. You'll hear a promo on this end, and we'll be right back. Stick around. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. So there are actually some substantial differences between the Taliban, the Afghanistan Taliban, the group that has, that Donald Trump signed what his Secretary of State his Defense Secretary and his National Security Advisor referred to as surrender documents to back in early 2020. There's a difference between the Taliban and ISIS, or even K-ISIS, which is how they're identifying the ISIS group that has emerged in Afghanistan. The main difference is that the Taliban's ambitions are largely confined to Afghanistan. They want to be a regional force. They were the government of Afghanistan before. They want to be the government of Afghanistan again. ISIS, on the other hand, wants to reestablish the entire caliphate across the Middle East, across northern Africa, across parts of southern Europe. And this is going to bring these two into conflict. I've got a whole video about this over at ThomHartmann.com for folks who support the program. Check it out. 24 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. We're talking with Sophie Bjork-James about her new book, The Divine Institution. And Sophie, so you go to Colorado Springs. You meet with over 100 of these evangelical groups and Bible study groups and hang out with them. You're right up front with them that you're not a Christian. You're unaffiliated in any way with any religion or church. You are an anthropologist, and you're here to essentially study them. Many of them respond to you as if, oh, God must have brought this person to me. Fresh meat, basically. How would you best describe the worldview as an anthropologist of the people that you were meeting, that you were studying, as it were, when you were there?
Yeah, I mean, my experience was that people individually were incredibly kind, and that there was a huge ethic in terms of, embracing, and being kind to anyone who you meet. And I definitely experienced that in terms of people's generosity towards me. But I also really came to see that hierarchy is incredibly important in that worldview. And so my interest was in looking at what allows for this, really significant political unity within white evangelicalism. And what I found is that an emphasis on the nuclear family, on, a father, a wife, and children is kind of the cornerstone of their entire theology. So it's the center of their kind of lived experience. So many churches will organize Bible studies based on whether you're a young adult or you're married or you're an empty nester, right? And so it's organized based on how you fit into the nuclear family. And, I came to see like almost every sermon, there's some evangelical feminists that want to have women ordained as ministers. In practice, that's incredibly rare. So all of the main pastors, all the elders and overseers, like everyone in positions of authority in these churches are men. There could be women overseeing a women's or children's ministry, but it's all the positions of authority are men. And most of the pastors, when they preach on Sunday mornings or Wednesday evenings or Thursday evenings, there's a lot of preaching, and that happens in these churches. But most will bring in stories about, a fight they got in with their wife or mother-in-law at the Walmart parking lot as a way to kind of make the Bible make sense. Right. That reinforces the importance of this nuclear family.
I want to dig into that on the other side of the break, if we can do that. We've got to take about a 5-minute break here at the bottom of the hour for our local stations to do news and whatever they do. We'll be back in just a second. Stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Actually, we'll be back in about 5 minutes. And we're talking with Sophie Bjork-James. The book is The Divine Institution. Stick around. Well, it's a brand new week, and it's a brand new opportunity to support Free Speech TV. And what an extraordinary thing, right? To have a television network that consistently tells the truth, that has some just brilliant programming from everything from news to opinion to interactive programming to diverse voices on multiple dimensions. This is something that the Free Speech TV is a network that is really and truly unique in the United States and worthy of your support. And I'm honored to be on the network. I'm happy to be on the network. I hope that this program is of value to you. I know that the network is of value to me beyond my own program. I mean, just the existence of a progressive television network in the United States seems just so very, very important. So I have two asks for you today. The first is real simple. Would you please make an effort today or this week, just kind of a commitment to yourself, to not just tell a few other people about Free Speech TV, but get at least one other person. Duplicate yourself. Get at least one other person to watch a couple of programs on Free Speech TV and with the goal of bringing in one more regular viewer, one more person who is, who regularly likes Free Speech TV. Think about, think about a friend of yours, somebody that you know, who you think might have an interest in. Would they probably bond best with me or with Stephanie or with Randy or with Sonali or with Amy Goodman or David Packman? What program would really ring their bell? What program would they, and there's other programs as well. I'm sorry, I don't have everything on the top of my head, but what do you think is going to really get them hooked on Free Speech TV? And then figure out a way to, maybe invite them over to watch with you, or to watch together virtually, and you can talk on the phone while you're both watching TV, or you can say, hey, watch the first half hour of the show and then let's talk, or something like that. Figure out a way. There's got to be ways to do this, right? Creativity here. This is your opportunity to bring in new people, because we need to expand our base for Free Speech TV and have more people participating, more people viewing. Of course, we want to get the message out wider. I mean, a good, solid, informational, progressive message, but that also strengthens our fundraising base for Free Speech TV. The more viewers we have, there's always a small percentage of viewers who are donors, and so the more donors we'll have as well. So that's a way that you can actually help Free Speech TV, even financially, without sending them money. The second ask, of course, is to send Free Speech TV some money. That's pretty straightforward. And there's two ways to do that. One is by making a one-time contribution. Call 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org during the program that you're watching and make a contribution online. Very straightforward stuff. The second way to do it is to have a regular recurring contribution where your gift is your credit card is dinged every month, and that need not be a huge amount of money. It's the predictability is actually the factor or the variable there that is so very important. Is that Free Speech TV? I've talked about this a lot. I don't need to explain this in great detail right now, because you've probably already heard it 30 times, but having that ability to do budgeting, to know going into the future that, we've got this number of people giving this amount of money, that's important stuff. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. There's a number of premiums that Free Speech TV offers with your gifts. When you make these are all for one-time gifts. There's, with a $20 gift, there is your choice between the Free Speech TV sticky sticker, like a bumper sticker kind of sticker, or the Free Speech TV clear sticker, like the clingy kind of stick it on glass sticker. With a $50 gift, there is the Free Speech TV canvas tote bag, which is, suitable for groceries or books or shopping or, picnicking, all kinds of things. It's a very, very nice canvas tote bag in two different designs, by the way. You can pick one. With the $75 gift, you have a choice between a Free Speech TV hat or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug with my mug on it, with a $75 gift. Only available here. Sure to be a collector's item someday. With a $100 gift, you have a choice of the Free Speech TV notebook and pen or the Free Speech TV socks. With a $120 gift, the Free Speech TV t-shirt or the Hidden History of American Healthcare, my newest book, How Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich. $240 gift, the virtual meet and greet. $360 gift, Thom Hartmann University gift box, the socks, the bumper sticker, the Hidden History of Healthcare, the mug, and the hat. And a $1,000 gift. Get in line to come visit us here in Portland, and we'll hang out together, and I'll buy you a lunch. Those are the goodies, but mostly it's here's your chance to be a part of something extraordinary. This little engine that could, this wonderful television network, Free Speech TV. Please call now. Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. So we've got a new video up about the Senate Leadership Fund and the Congressional Leadership Fund, the SLF and the CLF. Nice, innocent-sounding names, right? Leadership funds and Senate and Congress, but they're Republican super PACs that are taking millions and millions of dollars from fossil fuel and other dirty industries and from right-wing billionaires and recycling that money directly into the campaigns. In fact, in several cases, actually running on the ground, get out the vote efforts for Republican members of Congress, running the entire television operation for some of these members of Congress. Lauren Boebert received over $900,000 from the Congressional Leadership Fund so that she could take the 3rd District of Colorado. It's an amazing story. They spent $437 million just in the last election. This is poisoning this money, poisoning our democracy. It's all over at thomhartmann.com. Also an assistant professor of anthropology at Vanderbilt University, or in the anthropology department of the practice of anthropology. And Sophie, I wanted to do a little deeper dive into both basically the patriarchy aspect of the white evangelical movement and also the racial aspect of it. If we can take those separately. You were talking just before we were so rudely interrupted by the break at the bottom of the hour about your experience of basically an institution with all-male leadership, which in some ways I suppose kind of mirrors the Catholic Church. I don't know to what extent they drew from that or if they're just both drawing from a patriarchal institution. And I'd love your thoughts on that. But why and how is this the case that at the core of the white evangelical movement is this idea of the family, and what impact does that have on people who grow up in this movement who are not straight men and women or boys and girls?
Yeah, that's a really important question. I think the long history of evangelicalism is that before Protestant, before the birth of Protestantism, it was the Catholic Church, and so in terms of the European Christianity, patriarchy was incredibly central. It was the kind of defining. It was one of the defining features of Christianity, and so despite having a long, unique history of its own, Protestantism, and particularly evangelical Protestantism, has inherited this emphasis on patriarchy. And despite there being some evangelical feminists that are trying to change that, I spent a year in Colorado Springs. As I mentioned, I interviewed over 100 people, and no one complained about it. No one pointed it out. No one said we should have more women ordained as ministers or more women preachers. It was kind of just like the background that never got commented on, but was made the institution run. So, I found that one of the reason why it's so central is that in the evangelical worldview, everyone needs to learn to submit to God, and that there's a very clear there's very clear relationships with authority and submission that need to stay in place in order to kind of ground this theological worldview into daily life, and that patriarchy, and especially in the family, is incredibly central, right? So within a patriarchal family, there's a very clear hierarchy in that worldview of men have the power, they're supposed to be the leaders, women are the followers, and then the children are the followers of the parents, and that the parents actually kind of represent God to the children in the family. And, you know, I think we need more nuance when we talk about patriarchy, because it's often talked about as though there's one form of patriarchy, and there isn't. There's multiple forms of patriarchy, and the kind that the evangelicals that I got to know in Colorado Springs embrace, you know, we could say it's like a kinder, gentler patriarchy, where men are supposed to have, you know, majority of the power in the household, but they're also supposed to be kind and servants themselves to their wives, and their wives are supposed to have power. And in a lot of relationships, that I observed, at least very clearly, the women, you know, often would make more money and have like more dominant personalities and, you know, talk more, and like they, you know, but they would still say like, I defer to my husband and the husband is in charge. But that hierarchy within the family in a heterosexual marriage is kind of a, you know, minor symbol of this broader hierarchy of, you know, the individual with Jesus, right? Is that everyone is supposed to submit to Jesus and like need to learn that submission in terms of being a good Christian, and that the family is the way that submission is learned and practiced, and becomes, you know, as I describe it, a divine institution.
Well,
so what happens?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add, you know, that's at the core of our entire culture of what we call Western civilization. This idea of patriarchy as well.
Right, and that there's different manifestations of that, and in evangelical culture, it's very explicit, and that patriarchy really helps to define opposition to same-sex rights and same-sex equality, because if you have a marriage between two women or two men, there's no inherent hierarchy, right? Mm-hmm. Clearly, in those relationships, there often is hierarchy, but it's not established in the same way that gender allows for those relationships to be seen as hierarchical. And that egalitarianism, or perceived egalitarianism, kind of turns the entire evangelical order on its head. And thus creates a huge backlash against it. So for my research, I actually attended one of the last Exodus International conferences, which was a conference designed to help people, they say Christians they would describe it as unwanted same-sex attraction, to overcome their attractions. And I interviewed over a dozen people who identified as either ex-gay, so people who formerly identified as gay, who now identify as either heterosexual or at least no longer gay, as well as a number of people who identify as ex-gay, which is a little tongue-in-cheek, but people who said they were, you know, tried to be ex-gay and then came back and realized that was who they are. And really through those stories, along with interviews with parents, like, you know, heterosexual parents, evangelical parents with gay, lesbian, or bisexual or trans children, saw that there's just very widespread ostracism happening within evangelical culture against people who either identify as queer, identify as trans, or even just support LGBT rights. You know, I interviewed a number of moms who, you know, had, you know, came from an evangelical worldview, were opposed to LGBT rights. They had a kid that came out, eventually came to realize that a lot of kids kill themselves because of rejection from parents and rejection from culture, and came to the point where they realized that they were actually doing harm through, you know, opposing sexual diversity, and, you know, through supporting their children, ended up getting kicked out of their churches. It's not uncommon to happen. And so, I mean, I think that there is this kind of slow-moving river across evangelical culture of people starting to realize that they are doing harm by opposing LGBT rights, and that's happening at every level of evangelical culture. But the vast majority of evangelicals continue to oppose rights for sexual minorities. And I found it was explicitly because of patriarchy. You know, we don't always think about these as related, but, you know, that same-sex relationships really challenge this patriarchal model that sees everything in the world as needing to fit within these hierarchies. Yeah. And it's a powerful motivator then to oppose, people with different forms of sexual identities.
You co-edited a book called Beyond Populism, Angry Politics in the Twilight of Neoliberalism, and I'm working on a book on neoliberalism right now, so I've been reading a lot of Hayek and Friedman and whatnot. And Hayek in particular goes out of his way to say that if we shift everything over to the market and essentially do away with government outside of some very narrow areas like police and military, that it only works if there is a superstructure or a cultural infrastructure that is moral. And he defines morality as the family. The family is the essential element of morality, and comes right out, in addition to, well, Mises more the racist rants, but Hayek more the patriarchal rants. I mean, comes right out and says that kind of hierarchy, that family hierarchy of dads in charge, is not only essential to the survival of society, in his opinion, but also is essential for their neoliberal philosophy to work, because there's no other basically guardrails on the marketplace. I'm wondering if, having edited a book on neoliberalism and this book that you just wrote here, The Divine Institution, if there's any, am I just imagining an overlap here, or is there something there? Or is it just cultural coincidence?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, part of me wanted to, call the book, the evangelical ethic and the spirit of neoliberalism, right? That they clearly go hand in hand, both in terms of the time frame and in terms of, because the other aspect of this, right, is that evangelicals typically support free market capitalism. So what I found is that, because through this research, I also attended a number of both conservative conferences and explicitly religious right conferences, listened to way too much Christian radio for the research. And, it's very clear that most evangelicals believe that God can move through the market, but he cannot move through the government.
Right.
So, this idea that the market somehow is susceptible to God and to God's influence. But, the government, the welfare programs, family leave policies, support, even food benefits for children, is often framed as a way to oppose God's work in the world, right? And so there's this incredible valorization, bringing in a religious moral logic to austerity, saying that austerity is actually a way to increase people's exposure to God.
Wow.
So when, you can think about it in terms of if there's poverty, having programs that help children eat is a moral claim, but for evangelicals who see the government as only stopping God's movement in the world,
right,
they can oppose that.
Right, and they quote Jesus saying, the poor will be with you always, or have been and will be. Professor Sophie Bjork-James is with us. We'll be right back. The book is The Divine Institution.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Stick around. We'll be right back. It's 47 minutes past the hour. So, Sophie, this is really interesting because neoliberalism has had such an influence on the Republican Party in the United States. Obviously, also on the Democratic Party, with Bill Clinton's embrace of it, maybe a softer, gentler form of neoliberalism, but and Tony Blair's. But you said earlier that you didn't see a big connection between, or you didn't hear a lot of politics being preached from the pulpit, and yet 80% of the evangelical, self-identified evangelicals, white evangelicals, were voting for Donald Trump in the last election, which seems counterintuitive given who he is. Can you speak to that issue of politics and religion and, within the white evangelical movement?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think what's happened is that partly because of abortion. That was the one political topic that I heard frequently. Some opposition to LGBT rights, but I mean, the one topics that pastors would just kind of mention offhand, or there'd be circulating petitions in the churches, was about opposing abortion, as framing abortion as the most important, moral, political issue. But that there's become this kind of common sense way that if you're going to be an evangelical, you're going to be a conservative Republican. I mean, James Dobson had this quote saying, like, you don't have to be a Christian to be a conservative. But if you're you basically, if you're going to be that all Christians will be conservative. If you are a Christian, you will be conservative. And so I found, this was partly a kind of interesting twist of fate in terms of my methods, is that I had people, because I'm not a Christian, I ended up interviewing people who then would introduce me to other Christians who had converted to Christianity as adults. And I realized it was probably because they wanted me as a non-Christian to see, how amazing it would be to convert as an adult. But I ended up through interviewing, I think about 15 people who had converted to Christianity as an adult, found that, for the people kind of narrate, their conversion story and as inseparable from a political conversion. Their religious conversion was inseparable from a political conversion. So one of the best examples of this was I interviewed someone who worked for a conservative Christian organization who talked about, he was probably in his 60s at the time, and talked about, being this kind of like freewheeling, free love hippie, and then living in the Bay Area, and then converting to evangelicalism after his boss invited him to attend his church. And, he was like, yeah, I used to be all about, sex, love, drugs, and rock and roll. And, and now here I am. And like, we looked around his office where it's like, he lives and breathes this religious right agenda. And in all of these interviews, I try to have people step back and be like, okay, well, when did you change your politics and how did that happen? And often people would it was like they couldn't even separate them, right? That conversion meant not just believing in Jesus and just, reading the Bible, attending church, but also often involved this political worldview.
We're talking with Sophie Bjork-James, her new book, The Divine Institution, White Evangelicalism's Politics of the Family. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So Rand Paul is now echoing Louis Gohmert. Remember Louis Gohmert back in the day, after 9/11, when he was talking about terror babies. There's Muslims coming to the United States to have babies who will be citizens, and we can't kick them out anymore, and then they're going to grow up and they're going to be terrorists. Yeah, and we all kind of laughed at Louis Gohmert. So now Rand Paul is talking about how the Biden administration is taking kids from down at the border who may have it, COVID, and they're plucking them up and putting them all over the United States as if they're wishing to seed the country with a new variant. Right. But that's not half of it. Then he goes on to say that, for him, quote, the bottom line for those who are saying I won't go to a restaurant unless everybody's vaccinated, he says, mind your own business. Well, Rand, it is our business. Public health is all of our businesses. I've got a whole new rant about Rand Paul's bizarre take on the public good over at thomhartmann.com. It's a video. You can check it out there. And welcome back. We're talking about the book, The Divine Institution, with its author, Sophie Bjork-James. Sophie, we were just talking about how it's almost impossible to separate, at least for the people who are within the white evangelical movement, their politics from their religion. And we only have about, maybe 4 minutes left here. I wanted to also get to race as well. But just very quickly, I'm curious, which infiltrated the other? Or why are they so closely correlated?
Yeah, I think in some ways it goes back to the kind of foundation, the emergence of the religious right, because it really coincided with the explosion of evangelicalism in the United States, right, where today the vast majority of Christians in the U.S. are evangelical, what we call the mainline Protestant denominations, like the Methodists, have been declining in numbers for decades. And so with the emergence of the religious right, it comes simultaneously to this expansion of evangelicalism in the United States. But, I think tying together the politics and race here is that evangelicalism is entirely focused on relationships. So the patriarchal family is central as this, kind of node of relationships that people live out their faith. But it's all about, the morality is, and Christianity and spirituality are all, manifest in personal relationships. And what that means is that structural reality is invisible. That goes for things like poverty, right? Poverty isn't about, a history of economic policies, right, that lead to, excessive CEO pay and, decreasing wages for the majority of Americans. Poverty is about individuals who may not have the best values at home, right, who aren't actually applying themselves, right? And so the solution to poverty is not through policy, but through befriending a middle-class person befriending a homeless person and helping teach them better values, right, et cetera. It's all through individual relationships. So that also means structural racism is also invisible, right? And so racism is about, a problem of individual psyche. Someone may have personal prejudice that then can be overcome. So frequently the evangelicals that I got to know in Colorado Springs would talk about racism as a sin and racism as a problem, and Bible studies would sometimes talk about Mormonism as though Mormonism has a huge race problem and Christianity can't be racist, because they understood racism as about, this problem of a moral conscience, an individual problem, as opposed to a structural problem, right, that privileges certain people based on race while, perpetuating oppression based on others, right? So something like police brutality or, in Nashville, there's this report that came out a few years ago called Driving While Black, where the police actually were pulling over statistically more African Americans every year than actually lived in town, right? That those issues become invisible. They can't, not something that you can even imagine
it's
because
white privilege
everything
on steroids.
is about the individual. It's that. And so I think that it really brings in both race and politics into this particular theological tradition.
That's remarkable. The book, The Divine Institution, White Evangelicalism's Politics of the Family by Sophie Bjork-James. Sophie, thanks so much for being with us today and for this whole hour. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for the conversation.
My pleasure, and thanks for writing a brilliant book. We will be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires you. So please get out there, get active, tag, you're it. And be kind to yourself and the folks around you today. Eh? Have a great afternoon.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit delivery service. More information at hellofresh.com, code TOM. CB Distillery for sleeping and pain relief. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. Dinovite, only the best all-natural pet supplements. More info at dinovite.com. Annie's Kit Clubs, creativity delivered right to your door. More info at annieskitclubs.com/Tom. Wild Alaskan Company, delicious, sustainably sourced seafood delivered right to your door. More information at wildalaskancompany.com/Tom. and Mack Weldon, reinventing men's basics. More info at mackweldon.com/Tom.
We say fight back!